Trapped in a tight squeeze and suffocated, there are few fates more harrowing than slowly dying in a place meant only for passage. The tight squeeze is one of the most feared scenarios in the world of caving. It begins with a choice, an entry point into a narrow, winding passage barely wider than the human body. At first, the walls seem manageable. Your helmet scrapes the ceiling, your chest compresses as you slide forward inch by inch, and your arms are pinned to your sides. You tell yourself to keep calm, that the exit is just ahead. But then something shifts. Maybe it's a subtle angle that curves sharper than expected. Maybe it's a miscalculated breath, or the weight of your own body pressing into a downward slope. Suddenly, you're stuck. You inhale to ease forward, but your chest expands into cold, indifferent stone. You exhale, hoping for wiggle room, but the space tightens. Your muscles begin to tremble. The air grows warmer, heavier, wetter. Panic blooms in your lungs. Your headlamp flickers against rock, no more than inches from your eyes, and you realize there's no turning around. Not here. Time fractures. Minutes stretch into hours. Your breathing grows shallow, not from lack of oxygen, but from the pressure, both internal and external. You can feel your ribs bending. Your heart pounds against stone. Every sound, your pulse, your breath, the slow grind of your own desperate shifting, echoes like thunder, and then stillness. You're not screaming because you can't. You're not moving because you're held by the earth itself. Slowly, silently, your body fails. You're alone, entombed in a tunnel the world will forget. Crushed by a collapsing limestone ceiling. There is a deceptive beauty to limestone caves. Their grand halls, their cathedral-like silence, the elegance of ancient formations carved by centuries of water and time. But beneath that elegance lies fragility. Limestone is porous, brittle, vulnerable to pressure, erosion, and fate. Cavers often marvel at the stillness of these spaces, unaware that just inches above them rest tons of calcified silence, waiting for a crack too small to notice. It begins with a faint sound, barely a whisper, like grains of sand shifting or a soft pop somewhere deep in the rock. Maybe no one notices it. Maybe someone pauses, scans the ceiling with a beam of light, sees nothing. The group moves forward, and then the cave decides. A fracture gives way. A slab the size of a van peels from the ceiling as effortlessly as peeling skin from fruit. There is no time to scream, no time to run. The weight of the ceiling, once held in perfect balance, now plummets in an instant. Bones shatter before the mind can process what's happening. The air is filled with dust, echoes of screams, and the thunderclap of rock meeting flesh. What remains is unrecognizable, limbs twisted, torsos flattened, helmets split in two. Survivors, if any, are left stunned in the sudden silence that follows. The limestone doesn't care. It was never malevolent. It simply fell, because that's what rock does when it's tired of holding itself up. And in that moment, a life or several end, not with drama or glory, but with the cold, final weight of the earth reclaiming its own. Drowned. During a flash flood in a cave system. Caves have no windows, no warning. The storm doesn't need to be near. It can be miles away, raging unseen across mountains, dumping water into cracks and crevices that quietly feed the underground like veins to a heart. One moment, the cave is calm, still, dry, echoing only with breath and quiet laughter. The next it begins, a distant rumble, not thunder, but something deeper than a breeze. It seems impossible, wind inside a cave, but it's not wind, it's pressure. Then the roar begins, low, then rising, a sound that doesn't belong underground. And then it comes, a wall of water, sudden, cold, and without mercy. It doesn't trickle, it surges, it explodes into chambers, bursts through tunnels, and turns narrow passages into tombs. The caver scrambles, feet slipping on wet stone, light flaring against rising foam. There's no time to think, no high ground, no dry escape. The water is faster than human instinct. It lifts the body, slams it into walls, drags it into blackened depths. Equipment is torn away, helmets knocked loose, ropes ripped from hands, the lungs burn. The scream drowns before it ever surfaces. Panic becomes stillness as the cold steals movement, then consciousness, then everything. Later, when the water recedes, the cave is quiet again. Just wet walls, mud trails, and lifeless limbs caught on rocks like forgotten relics. The cave gives nothing back, no explanation, no forgiveness, just silence, and the memory of how quickly the earth can change its mind. Slipped into a vertical shaft and fell to death. Vertical shafts in caves are like the mouths of ancient gods, silent, gaping, and endlessly hungry. They wait in the dark, concealed by shadow or illusion, sometimes barely a step beyond the beam of a headlamp. They don't call out, they don't lure, they simply exist, and all it takes is one misstep. The caver is exploring, focused on a narrow ledge or a curious rock formation. Maybe they're checking their gear, distracted by echoing voices, or simply following a familiar route in unfamiliar conditions. Their boot lands half an inch too far to the left. The stone gives way. Their balance tilts. Gravity accepts the offering. There's no scream at first, only shock, a jolt of adrenaline. Then the body drops, weightless, spinning, helpless. Walls flash by in strobe-lit blur, the headlamp flickering like a dying star. The fall isn't silent. Bones strike rock, limbs flail and crack. The impact, when it comes, is grotesquely final, a thud that echoes not with sound, but with permanence. Sometimes the shaft is hundreds of feet deep. The body is shattered, twisted, unrecognizable, crumpled at the bottom of a space carved by time and untouched by light. Other times, the fall doesn't kill instantly. The caver lies broken, conscious, and alone. The darkness becomes a second kind of fall, an endless drop into isolation, into waiting, into knowing. No rope, no call for help, just the slow realization that no one knows how far you fell, or even where you vanished. The shaft doesn't care. It never moved. It only received. Lost and starved in total darkness, there is a particular kind of fear that blooms not from what you see, but from what you no longer can. In a cave, when the last light flickers and dies, darkness becomes absolute, not shadow, not dimness, but a void so complete it erases the world. No horizon, no time, no sense of direction. It's in this silent abyss that the lost are swallowed. It starts with confidence, a turn taken without marking it, a short detour to explore, a narrow passage, a friend's voice just out of reach, then silence, then the echo of your own breath, bouncing off walls you don't recognize. You call out, nothing. You turn back or try to, but nothing looks familiar. Every path is the same. Every wall could be the last one you touch. The light dies. Maybe it was a dying battery, or maybe you dropped it while rushing. You fumble for a spare. Nothing. Darkness folds in, thick and suffocating. You sit. You whisper your own name, hoping to ground yourself. Hours pass. You scream until your throat bleeds and your mind starts to crack. Days blur. Hunger gnaws, but thirst screams louder. The body weakens, trembling. You begin to hallucinate light. You see outlines in blackness that aren't real. At some point, even fear disappears. There's only breathing, then shallow breathing, then silence. You die not in pain, but in an unraveling. You become part of the stone, curled in some forgotten tunnel, just another ghost story told by those who leave markers and still wonder, every time they turn off their light, what it would be like to never turn it back on. Asphyxiated by rising carbon dioxide in a low ventilation cave. There's no sound to carbon dioxide, no warning, no color, no scent to betray its creeping advance. It doesn't come with the violence of water or the sudden fury of falling rock. It comes quietly, an invisible tide rising in a place where air should be safe. In certain caves, especially volcanic or low ventilation systems, Carbon dioxide pools like a hidden predator, heavy, patient, lethal. The caver descends, unaware. Breathing feels normal at first, shallow perhaps, but the cave is tight, the passage narrow. The air is humid, stale, but nothing alarming. Then something shifts. A dizziness blooms behind the eyes. Muscles feel sluggish, thoughts fog. You try to speak, but the words fumble, thick and slow. Panic simmers below the surface, but it's hard to act on fear when your lungs refuse to cooperate. You kneel instinctively, trying to steady yourself, but that's when it gets worse. CO2 is heavier than oxygen. It pools low. The closer to the ground you are, the deeper you fall into it. Your breathing turns to choking. Your vision starts to stutter. Black edges tightening into a tunnel. You try to stand, but your legs betray you. Every inhale brings less life and more weight. You feel yourself slipping inward, collapsing, sinking into the cave floor like something returning to the earth. There are no wounds, no visible trauma, just a still body in the quiet, as if resting. But inside, the lungs stop knowing what to do. The heart slowed to a question. The cave stays silent, unchanged. But in that silence, the air had made its decision. Crushed under a boulder during spelunking. Boulders don't fall in slow motion. There is no dramatic buildup, no ominous tremor to warn of what's to come. In the stillness of a cave, time is deceptive. Massive stones lie balanced on ledges or wedged between narrow walls, seemingly stable, having rested there for centuries. But all it takes is one shift, a misplaced footstep, a knocked helmet, the gentle scrape of a backpack, and the balance breaks. The sound is sickening, a dull crack, a sudden groan of earth. A shadow moves where there shouldn't be one, and then, wait, a crushing, instant, all-consuming force. The boulder crashes downward with impossible speed, slamming flesh against rock, compressing ribs like paper, splitting bone, flattening organs. The human body is not made to withstand that kind of pressure. It buckles instantly. There's no time to scream. The lungs are forced empty. The spine shatters like glass. The eyes go wide, not from pain, but from sheer disbelief. The others rush back, screaming names, clawing at rock, but they already know. What's beneath can't be pulled free. Blood seeps into dust. Hands reach out for limbs that no longer respond. The cave is silent again, except for the shallow echoes of breathless shock. The boulder lies still now, at peace, as if it never moved at all. It was only gravity, only pressure, only a mistake, and beneath it, someone who was laughing seconds ago, now pressed into stone like a fossil, not yet hardened by time. Killed by venomous snake, inside a cave crevice. The crevice is tight, narrow, damp, a slit in the rock that tempts the curious and the brave. You slide into it, shoulders scraping, breath shallow. Every sound is magnified, the shifting gravel beneath your chest, the soft whistle of your breath against cold limestone. But you are not alone. Deep in the stillness, something stirs. You don't see it at first. The beam of your headlamp dances across the walls, but misses the slow ripple of scaled muscle coiled in the shadows. The snake doesn't rattle. It doesn't flee. It waits. Your hand reaches blindly forward, seeking grip, and instead finds heat, texture, movement, a flash of fangs, then pain, sharp, searing, electric. You jerk backward, but there's nowhere to go. The crevice holds you still. The snake strikes again. Venom floods your system, not instantly fatal, but devastating. Your heart races, muscles cramp, your vision blurs even as the world stays black. You try to scream, but it comes out a whisper. Sweat pools on your skin, cold and useless. The tight space amplifies your panic. You're trapped, poisoned, and paralyzed. Minutes pass like hours. Every breath is a war. And then the numbness comes. Your body convulses once, twice, then stillness. The snake, indifferent, slithers deeper into the dark, leaving you alone with the venom and the stone. No grand collapse, no fall, just the quiet horror of dying in a crack so small the world might never find you, and even if they do, They'll never know how it felt to meet death, fangs first, in the dark. Succumb to hypothermia in an icy cave pool. Cold doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, coating the stone in frost, stilling the air, waiting at the edge of dark subterranean pools that never see the sun. The water in these caves is glacial, born from ancient ice, untouched by warmth. When a caver slips or dives into one of these pools, the shock is instant. It punches through the body like 1,000 needles. Muscles seize, breaths vanish. Every heartbeat begins a countdown. At first, the mind rallies. You think you can swim. The water is freezing, but your limbs move. You see the edge, just a few strokes away. But then something changes. The blood pulls back from the skin to protect your core. Your fingers grow numb. Your legs begin to drift. Confusion blooms like frostbite in the brain. You forget which way is up. You're still moving, but slower, slower still. The rocks around you echo with your gasps, your splashes, your fading strength. Your body becomes heavy, then foreign. Shivering turns to stillness. You stop fighting because the cold feels peaceful, like a lullaby whispered by the cave itself. When they find you, you're floating, eyes open, face pale, skin waxen and blue. Your limbs are suspended like a puppet in sleep. There are no signs of violence, no wounds, just silence, and the terrible quiet of a body that lost its battle against something invisible, relentless, and absolute. The cave did not trap you. The water did not rise. You simply stayed too long in a place that was never meant for life. Attacked by a bat swarm, fell to injury, and died. At first, it's just a flutter, a soft, rhythmic whisper overhead, like leaves rustling in a forgotten breeze. Then it grows, louder, sharper, until the air vibrates with wings. In some caves, entire colonies of bats live packed against the ceilings, thousands upon thousands of tiny bodies hanging in eerie silence. But they are not quiet forever. All it takes is one misstep, a sudden light, a startled sound, and the sky beneath the stone comes alive. The swarm erupts like smoke with teeth. The caver flinches, caught off guard as the air thickens into chaos. Wings slap skin, claws scrape flesh, and tiny fangs graze, expose neck and face. There's no time to think. The headlamp spins wildly, casting strobe-lit panic through the tunnel. The bats don't aim, but they are many, and they are fast. Disoriented, the caver stumbles back, recoiling, flailing, until foot meets void. The fall is short, but brutal. A ledge missed in the frenzy. The body slams against rock, a sickening crunch echoing louder than any screech. The bats scatter, fleeing into darkness, their frenzy dissolving as quickly as it began. And there he lies, arms twisted, skull cracked, eyes wide in terror. It wasn't the bats that killed him, not directly. They didn't mean to. They only did what instinct demanded. But in that moment of panic, of blinding movement and claustrophobic terror, the cave became a death trap. And in its cold, indifferent silence, it watched one life end, not with purpose, but with panic in the air and 1,000 wings screaming nothing at all. Impaled on stalagmites after a fall, the cavern yawns beneath you, vast, echoing, majestic. Its floor glistens with a forest of stone teeth, stalagmites carved over millennia, each rising like a silent warning. From above, they seem distant, manageable, part of the scenery, until gravity betrays you. One misstep, a rope slips, a handhold gives way, your body jerks into freefall, a sudden betrayal of control. For a moment, there's nothing, no air, no sound, just the sensation of weightlessness and the flashing panic that realization brings. And then, impact! It isn't a crash, it's a puncture, a sharp, brutal intrusion of stone through flesh. The stalagmite doesn't bend, it doesn't hesitate, it enters, a thigh, a rib, the gut, it doesn't matter where, the result is the same. Skin splits, muscle tears, bone fractures around the intrusion. The scream that rises is feral, fractured by agony and disbelief. Blood flows fast in the cold. You try to lift yourself off, but your body resists, impaled, tethered to the earth by a monument of time. You're alive, for now. That's the cruelest part. Every breath is a spike of fire. Every heartbeat pumps blood into the ground beneath you. Your arms shake as you try to brace, but there's nowhere to go. Your limbs are useless. You are skewered like prey. Minutes stretch. Maybe someone hears you, maybe not. Eventually, shock gives way to silence. Cold seeps in, and the stalagmite, unmoved, unfeeling, holds you as it always has held water and time. You don't fall into death. You are held in place by it, one jagged inch at a time. Trapped between shifting rocks and slowly died. It begins with a sound that doesn't belong, a low groan, a deep crack, a shiver through the stone like the earth exhaling. Deep within the cave, far from the world above, the rocks move, not fast, not violent, just enough. A subtle shift in pressure, a slab nudges loose, a boulder settles, the pathway behind the caver, once open, now closed. The stone rearranges itself as if to say, "You don't leave now." There's no initial pain, just surprise. The caver turns, tries to retreat, and realizes their leg is pinned. A heavy wedge of rock rests across their thigh, unmovable, absolute. Panic flares. They push, twist, scream, knowing somewhere inside that no human strength undoes the will of the cave. The radio doesn't work this deep. The light flickers, the temperature drops. Hours pass, then days. The pain comes in waves, cramping, pulsing, radiating from the trapped limb. Dehydration sets in. The mouth dries to dust. The tongue sticks to the teeth. The hunger doesn't even get a chance to ache because thirst steals everything first. Muscles begin to fail. The body sags into stone, surrendering 1 inch at a time. Skin splits. Infection blooms. But worst of all is the stillness, the knowing no one will find you in time, knowing the rock is not malicious, just indifferent. It doesn't care how long you beg. It won't shift, won't ease. You're part of it now, flesh turned relic, breath turned silence, heartbeat slowed to stillness beneath layers of unfeeling earth, and the cave remains unchanged, always watching, never moved, crushed by falling debris. During an earthquake, there's a certain trust that builds between a caver and the earth. You learn to read its stillness, its breathing silence, the way sound travels through stone. But that trust is an illusion, because when the earth decides to move, it doesn't whisper, it roars. And in a cave, that roar becomes something ancient, something primal, something final. It begins with a vibration, barely perceptible, a tremble underfoot that feels like imagination. Then the rumble grows, rising from below as if the planet itself is screaming. Dust spills from cracks overhead. Walls that once stood still begin to sway. The cave becomes a throat, choking on its own gravity. Then it happens. The ceiling fractures. Massive chunks of stone tear loose and drop like executioner's hammers. There's no time to run, no space to dodge. A single boulder, half a ton of jagged, tumbling collapse, slams down with brutal certainty. The impact is catastrophic. Bones snap like twigs, lungs implode, the skull fractures before pain even has a chance to form. It is not a slow death. It is violent, final, unforgiving, and still the cave shakes. More debris rains down. Stalactites become spears, walls split open. Dust fills the lungs of those still breathing. Screams are drowned in the sound of earth convulsing. Then, slowly, silence returns. But it's not the same silence. It's thicker. It lingers with the weight of crushed bodies, buried beneath rubble that was once the ceiling, once the path, once the promise of safety. The cave holds them now, entombed in stone shaped by violence, frozen in the instant the ground beneath them chose to remember it was alive, died after being pinned upside down, As with John Edward Jones' Nutty Putty Cave, there is no fear like the moment you realize you can't go forward and you can't go back. In Nutty Putty Cave, John Edward Jones entered what he thought was a familiar, navigable passage. A tight squeeze, yes, but nothing unusual. He had caved before. He knew the rhythm. Breathe out, move forward, breathe in, hold still. But the rock didn't open up this time. It narrowed, subtly, fatally. His torso wedged. He exhaled again, desperate, trying to force more progress. It only made things worse. His arms were pinned beneath him, useless. His head tilted downward at a near vertical angle, blood draining into his skull. There was no space to turn, no way to push himself back. He was trapped, not metaphorically, but physically, by the cold indifference of stone. Rescuers came. They drilled. They rigged pulleys. For 27 hours, they tried to free him as gravity slowly crushed his body from the inside out. His heart struggled against the pressure. Blood pooled in his brain. Pain built behind his eyes. His lungs fought to expand in the narrowing space. They could speak to him. His wife even called in to say goodbye. But no one could touch him. No one could save him. Eventually, his body gave in. The circulatory collapse was silent, invisible, unstoppable. His pulse faded, his breathing slowed, and in that hole barely wider than his own shoulders, he died, upside down, alone, half a mile underground. The cave didn't roar, it didn't collapse. It simply held him too tightly and never let go. Poisoned by hydrogen sulfide gases. Some caves breathe death. Deep below the Earth's surface, where sunlight has never touched and wind dares not reach, toxic gases lie dormant, odorless in dangerous concentrations, waiting in black pools or drifting through vents like invisible ghosts. Hydrogen sulfide is one of the deadliest. At low levels, it smells like rotten eggs. At higher doses, it deadens the senses in seconds, stealing breath, shutting down the nervous system before you even know it's there. The caver steps into a chamber that feels oddly warm. The air is thick. Breathing becomes slightly harder, but not alarmingly so. Maybe it's just fatigue, maybe just stale air. Then a headache, then a wave of nausea. Eyes blur, muscles weaken. It doesn't feel like danger. It feels like exhaustion, but it's already too late. Hydrogen sulfide enters through the lungs and attacks the body from within. It binds to cells, halting oxygen's passage, suffocating the brain while the chest still rises and falls. Consciousness fades in a fog. Knees buckle. The caver collapses, convulsing briefly before going still, mouth slightly open as if to speak, though no sound escapes. The body lies motionless in the chamber, eyes wide, limbs twisted. There is no wound, no trauma, just death painted in silence. When rescuers arrive, if they arrive unprotected, they too may collapse beside the first, because hydrogen sulfide is not dramatic. It does not shout. It simply fills lungs with poison and steals life with a whisper, and the cave, still and calm, keeps its secret with every breath it doesn't take. Died from rabies after a bat bite. The bite was almost nothing, a scratch, barely felt in the shadow tangle of a narrow crawl space. The bat had darted past in panic, brushing skin with a flash of leathery wing and needlepoint teeth. A sting, maybe a drop of blood, but easily forgotten in the thrill of exploration. The caver wiped it away and moved on, never thinking that death had already entered through the wound. Rabies is patient. It moves slow, curling inward through nerves, silent and unseen. Days pass, then weeks. The bite fades, the memory fades, but the virus does not. It climbs toward the brain with cold precision, and when it reaches its destination, everything begins to unravel. It starts with confusion, a fog in the mind. Light feels wrong. Sounds are too sharp, too close. The body grows hot, then freezing. Muscles twitch without permission. Then come the fears, irrational, invasive, but undeniable. Water triggers panic. Air feels heavy. Throat muscles seize, making swallowing impossible. Rabies doesn't just destroy the body, it fractures the soul. Delirium follows, hallucinations, screams. The caver thrashes, foams, begs for water, yet chokes at its touch. Loved ones watch helplessly as the mind deteriorates into madness. There is no cure, not once symptoms begin. Only restraint, only sedation, only waiting. Death comes wrapped in confusion, terror, and silence. The same silence that filled the cave where the bat first struck, but now it's internal, a void spreading behind the eyes. And in the end, it wasn't the cave or the fall or even the bite that killed him. It was what came after, what he never saw, what he never felt until it was far too late. Buried alive. During a cave-in, cave-ins don't announce themselves. There's no dramatic crack, no warning siren, just a sound, dull, deep like a sigh from the earth, a shifting of pressure, a groan in the distance. By the time you realize what's happening, it's already begun. Rock doesn't fall slowly. It collapses in a violent, unforgiving cascade, slabs of stone and ancient earth breaking loose, like an avalanche in slow motion, but with no escape. You're standing one moment, then suddenly you're not. A wall buckles, a ceiling gives, dust explodes into your eyes and lungs. The world becomes chaos, grinding stone, the scream of breaking rock, the rush of air displaced by collapse. Then impact. You're thrown to the ground, bones jarring against unyielding surfaces, and before you can move, before you can even scream, a mass of debris crashes down onto your back, your legs, your chest. You're pinned, not just by weight, but by pressure. You try to breathe, but your ribs don't rise. You try to move, but there is no space. Your hands grasp at soil and gravel, but there's no give. Dust chokes your throat. Blood trickles. You scream into silence, but the sound doesn't carry, smothered by the tons of rock sealing your tomb. Then, nothing moves. Time distorts. You feel yourself slipping, not just into darkness, but into forgetting. You can taste the earth in your teeth, hear your heartbeat slow. You're not dying in fear anymore. You're dying in stillness, buried alive, not with a roar, but with the crushing quiet of being erased by the very ground you walked on. Died from dehydration. While trapped, there is a cruel quiet in dying of thirst. It doesn't come violently or fast. It unravels slowly, methodically, turning the body against itself with each passing hour. In a cave where time warps and light never touches the walls, dehydration becomes a predator in the dark. The caver is trapped, maybe by a collapse, maybe by a wrong turn that led to a dead-end maze. At first, they try to ration what little water they brought, drops from a canteen, moisture from the cave walls, even breath held tightly feels precious. But soon, the mouth begins to dry. The tongue sticks to the roof. Swallowing becomes a chore. The stomach cramps not from hunger, but from hollow, gnawing thirst. Muscles ache. The skin cracks. Eyes redden. By day 2, the saliva is gone. The lips are blistered. Breathing becomes shallow, not from panic, but from a body conserving what little moisture remains. The mind begins to fracture. Hallucinations bloom in the darkness. The sound of dripping water that isn't there. A voice calling from just around the bend. Light that flickers but never comes. They scream or whisper or laugh, but no one hears it. No one is coming. Eventually, the body gives in. The kidneys shut down, the heart stutters, the mind grows quiet. The caver curls up in the silence, every inch of skin burning with dryness, every thought fading like mist. And when the end comes, it's not dramatic, it's surrender, a slow erasure in the deep, where the cave absorbs the last breath like a secret it was always meant to keep. Fell into a lava tube and burned. The surface was deceiving. Solid, cracked earth stretched out across the volcanic field, mottled with ancient scars and jagged ridges. Beneath it, unseen, ran a hollow artery, a lava tube forged centuries ago, left behind like a vein in fossilized flesh. Its roof, once thick with heat, had cooled to a fragile crust. It looked safe, it looked sturdy, but it wasn't. The caver stepped forward, just one step, and the earth gave way. There was no warning, just a sudden collapse, a scream cut short, and the sickening sound of flesh and bone crashing into fire-carved stone. He dropped into the tube like a stone into a furnace, hitting jagged rock, tumbling, landing hard. But it didn't stop there. The air was thick, toxic, filled with the bitter breath of the planet's buried rage. Still warm, still alive. And then came the pain. Bones shattered, skin peeled, heat crawled across flesh in waves of blistering agony. There was no clean flame, only searing air, sharp rock and skin torn from raw muscle. Screams echoed into the cavernous dark, bouncing back like twisted music. The tube was too steep, too slick, too broken to climb, and with every breath, the lungs filled with gas that burned from the inside out. No one knew where he fell. There was no signal, no rescue, just the distant hiss of molten memory beneath the earth. Days later, searchers found the hole, but the body had fused to the stone, burned not to ash but to silence. The lava tube had taken him and left behind only a name. Skewered on metal climbing equipment. During a fall, climbing gear is meant to save your life. It gleams with precision. Metal carabiners, ascenders, anchors drilled into stone with care. You trust it. You rely on it. It becomes an extension of your body, a quiet guardian in the dark. But in one brutal moment, that same gear can become the instrument of your death. The fall happens in a flash. Maybe your harness wasn't secured just right. Maybe your boots slipped on slick limestone, or a single knot unraveled beneath your weight. 1 second you're climbing, a heartbeat later, gravity has claimed you. The rope jerks, the belay fails. You twist midair, arms flailing, eyes wide, and the ground doesn't come. Not yet. Instead, you collide with your own anchor setup, steel bolts and carabiners now aimed like teeth. You land hard, but not flat. One of the devices meant to hold you tears into your body. A jagged hook punches through your side. A sharpened bolt spears your abdomen. You're impaled by what was supposed to catch you. Pain isn't even immediate, just pressure, confusion, warmth leaking beneath your harness. And then the fire ignites, sharp, white-hot, spreading with each heartbeat. You try to move, but the metal holds you in place, embedded, twisted into bone and muscle. Blood pours out in thick, rhythmic waves, soaking your harness, your rope, your hands. You're not hanging from the cave anymore. You're hanging from yourself, suspended on your own lifeline turned weapon. You built the anchor. You trusted it, but the cave didn't care. It just watched as steel met flesh, and silence followed, electrocuted by faulty caving gear in wet conditions. Water in a cave is deceptive. It runs along walls, seeps from ceilings, pools silently in crevices, always present, always watching. In the damp, confined spaces of underground exploration, electronics are lifelines. Headlamps, radios, climbing gear, and sometimes they fail, not with a flicker or a pop, but with deadly consequence. The caver moves carefully through a narrow, water-slicked passage, their gear brushing the rock, hands gripping cold stone. The air smells metallic. A puddle deepens underfoot, unseen in the shadows. A wire, frayed from wear, dangles loosely, its casing thinned, its charge hungry. No one notices. Then, contact. Electricity doesn't scream, it strikes. A sharp jolt shoots through the caver's body, locking muscles in place. The arm seize, the jaw clenches tight. The current surges across damp clothing, into soaked skin, straight to the heart. The body vibrates violently, legs thrashing against the stone, until they crumple mid-spasm. The light on the helmet flickers once, then goes out. Silence returns. The air smells of burned fabric, scorched flesh. A faint wisp rises into the stale cave atmosphere. The others, just out of sight, hear the fall. They rush back only to find stillness, no cry, no breath, no pulse, just a body, twitching faintly, eyes wide with the last terror they ever saw. It wasn't a storm, it wasn't nature, it was a fault, tiny, overlooked, waiting, and in the cold silence of the cave, one spark became a killer, not loud, not visible, just final, drowned in a siphon passage. Siphon passages are nature's cruel illusion, tight, water-filled tunnels that bend and dip like serpents beneath the earth, swallowing light and sound in a twisting, liquid grip. For cave divers, they are the edge of exploration and the edge of survival. A siphon gives no choice. Once entered, it must be followed to the end. There is no turning around. The diver slips beneath the surface, bubbles trailing upward into silence. The tunnel is narrow, the ceiling pressing close, the walls brushing shoulders. Every inch forward is calculated, controlled. Visibility is limited. Light reflects back in murky clouds of silt, stirred by the slightest motion. Time becomes breath. Distance becomes pressure. The only sound is the rhythm of inhaling and exhaling until suddenly the rhythm stops. A fin catches. A tank scrapes. The silt explodes into a blinding fog. The passage dips without warning, narrowing into a choke point too small for escape. The diver panics, twisting, gasping, but the regulator fails to reach his mouth. The hose tugs, the mass shifts, water rushes in. A scream is swallowed. The lungs fight to hold back the inevitable. Hands claw at the rock, searching for purchase, for a pocket of air, for anything, but the siphon gives nothing. It is a trap of water and stone and time. When they find the body days later, it is still floating in place, caught between two turns of the earth, eyes open in frozen terror. The siphon has already moved on, its currents indifferent, its walls still waiting for the next breath to take. Lost air supply during cave diving. Water in a cave is not just cold, it's absolute. It presses against your body, clings to your mask, invades your ears and heartbeat. When you dive into a flooded tunnel, you surrender completely. The only barrier between life and death is the thin hum of a regulator, the hiss of breath from your tank. That rhythm is your god until it stops. At first, everything is calm. The lights cut through murky blue, illuminating stalactites submerged like frozen daggers. You glide forward, following the guideline, your only map in this submerged maze. But then, a tug, a snag, maybe on a rock. Maybe you kick silt into the water, and visibility vanishes. You fumble, your breathing quickens, and then it happens. The hiss goes silent. Your regulator gives no air. Panic explodes in your chest. You check your gauges, switch to backup, if you have one, but nothing flows. The air is gone, trapped behind valves or lost to a leak you didn't notice in time. Your hands scramble in zero visibility. You know the way back is close, but you can't see. You can't think. Every second burns oxygen faster. You try to hold your breath, but instinct fails. Your lungs scream. You inhale, and water fills your throat like fire. You choke, kick, twist. It's useless. Darkness begins to bleed into the edges of your vision. Your body convulses once, then again, then goes still. You float there, suspended in a world that once felt magical. Your bubbles rise into nothing. The cave watches, and the silence returns, swallowing you like the water you drowned in. Panic-induced cardiac arrest in tight tunnel. There's a special kind of fear that only exists in tight tunnels, where the stone presses against your chest, where every breath feels borrowed, and where turning around is no longer an option. In these narrow passages, even the most experienced caver can feel the edges of sanity begin to fray. The tunnel grows smaller, not in reality, but in perception. The walls feel like they're moving inward, the air thinner, the silence louder. The caver inches forward, one arm stretched, one pinned beneath their torso. Their helmet scrapes with every movement. Sweat begins to pour, not from exertion, but from a primal terror that floods the brain. They stop, try to breathe, but the rock presses harder. Their ribs can't fully expand. Each inhale feels like failure. The mind races, thoughts spiral. What if I never get out? What if I die right here? And then the heart begins to panic too. A sudden, electric jolt in the chest. A flutter, then a pounding so fierce it drowns out every other sound. But there's nowhere to stand, nowhere to sit, no space to move, just pressure and stillness. The caver tries to call out, but the voice is trapped behind clenched teeth. Pain explodes behind the sternum. The arms go numb. The vision narrows. They're not stuck by rock now. They're trapped by their own failing body. One last desperate gasp, then stillness. The heart has given up, not from injury, not from impact, but from the weight of fear. Crushing, relentless, inescapable, and the tunnel, unfeeling, holds them in place, as if it always knew. Starved, after losing group in Unmapped cave. The path wasn't supposed to split, but it did, somewhere between instinct and confusion, between the echo of a voice and the illusion of light. One wrong turn in an unmapped cave is enough to be forgotten, enough to disappear. The caver keeps moving at first, convinced they'll loop back around, that the others are just ahead, waiting. Footsteps quicken, breathing grows shallow, the tunnels narrow and twist, each chamber indistinguishable from the last. The headlamp dims, the silence thickens, and then the truth settles in. They are alone. Time stretches, the stomach growls, then cramps, the water bottle runs dry. Every corner explored leads only to more darkness, more stone. Hope becomes ration like breath. The body begins to shake, not from cold, but from emptiness. Muscles weaken, knees buckle, thoughts blur. Days pass without sunlight. Hunger turns to hallucination. The walls whisper, the shadows move. The caver speaks aloud, begging the dark for answers, for mercy. There is no reply, only the weight of the cave, pressing without sound, watching without pity. Eventually, the body lies down, not out of choice, but exhaustion. Bones protrude, lips crack. The light is long dead. There is no scream, no final struggle, just a whisper of breath fading into dust, a life shrunk down to a flicker lost in a labyrinth that never knew a name. When the group returns to the surface, no one knows where he vanished. The map remains blank, and deep below, the cave has claimed another, without violence, only silence, only time. Eaten by carnivorous beetles, hypothetical, extreme case. In the bowels of the earth, where light has never lived, evolution does strange things. Creatures adapt, not to survive in balance, but to hunt in absolute darkness. Imagine a species of beetle, blind but ruthless, drawn not to light or sound, but to the scent of blood, sweat, fear. Their mandibles serrated, their bodies small enough to slip through seams in rock, but fast, organized, and endlessly hungry. You've crawled into a chamber, rarely touched by man. Your light flickers. You cut your hand on a sharp crystal edge, just a graze. But in this place, a graze is a beacon. You pause to bandage it. That's when you hear it, a faint clicking, like rain on stone, but from beneath you. Then movement, legs, dozens, no, hundreds of them, pouring from cracks in the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Beetles, they swarm. You swat at them, but they're too many. They climb into your boots, under your sleeves, over your face. Their jaws find the wound, then your eyelids, the soft skin of your neck. Panic turns to agony. You try to run, but they cover the ground. You fall. They bite. They tear. Your screams echo, but the beetles don't care. They enter your mouth, your ears, your nose. You are eaten alive, not by wolves or fangs or claws, but by insects no larger than a fingertip, devouring you piece by frantic piece. By the time silence returns, there's nothing left but gear, bones, and the click, click, click of tiny mouths fading back into the stone, waiting for the next breath of blood. Killed by other spelunkers during a fight in tight space. In the world above, Conflict finds space to breathe. Arguments flare. Fists may fly. But there's always room to retreat, to scream, to run. Underground, it's different. Tension doesn't just build, it compresses. Trapped between stone and darkness, even friendship can fracture. Paranoia festers. Words cut deeper. Fear tightens the air. And sometimes, things go too far. The cave was supposed to be an adventure, a shared exploration, but something soured, maybe a wrong turn, a missed exit, or a disagreement about which path to take. Voices rose, accusations flew, and in the narrow crawl space, less than 3 feet high, there was no escape from each other. Shoulders brushed constantly. Every breath felt stolen from the next person. Then came the shove, small, almost reflexive, but in such tight quarters, small means everything. A knee slammed into a side. A hand clutched a tool too tightly. The flashlight cracked against bone. Panic replaced reason. The fight wasn't wild. It was frantic, desperate. One person struck out to escape. The other struck back. Limbs tangled. A body was slammed against the stone. A head struck the ceiling. A scream echoed once, then cut off, and then silence. The others backed away, trembling, the space too small for regret to stretch. The body lay twisted, eyes open, blood pooling in the dust. Not from a monster, not from the cave, but from human hands in a place where there was no room for mistakes, and the cave, ever silent, became a witness, not to nature's cruelty, but to man's. Died from massive infection. After minor injury, it was nothing, just a scrape. A shallow cut on the shin from a jagged bit of limestone during a routine crawl. The kind of wound so small it didn't warrant more than a glance, a quick rinse, a dismissive laugh. But caves are not sterile. They are ancient, damp, and teeming with unseen life. Bacteria, born in darkness, thriving in still water, resting on the very walls that guide explorers deeper. At first, it was an ache. The skin reddened, the area swelled. Still, the caver pressed on. No one wants to be the one to turn back. But the pain grew sharper, hotter. Fever set in, humming beneath the skin like a quiet alarm. The cut, once clean, turned purple, then black at the edges. Muscles near the wound tensed uncontrollably. Breathing became shallow. The heartbeat thudded unevenly like boots on unstable ground. They tried to climb, to speak, to move toward the exit, but the cave fought back. Every step was fire. The infection had spread beyond the wound, into the bloodstream, into the lungs, into the brain. Words slurred, eyes dimmed. Then came the shaking, the foaming at the mouth. The body locked itself in a final, agonizing revolt. Surrounded by stone, far from help, the caver convulsed in silence, their cries echoing off walls that never cared. When the group finally carried them out, it was too late. What started as a scratch had bloomed into sepsis, a storm unleashed by invisible invaders. In the depths of the earth, the smallest wound can become a death sentence, not from the injury, but from what follows in the dark, trapped by melting ice wall collapse. Ice caves are breathtaking, cathedrals of glass, forged by winter and time. Their walls shimmer with ancient cold, blue and translucent, like frozen waves mid-crash. But beauty in these places is never safe. When warmth finds its way in, whether from sun, storm, or even the heat of human presence, the entire structure changes, and then it breaks. It starts with a single drop, harmless, maybe even mesmerizing, then another, then a steady trickle from above, landing on your helmet like rain from a dying god. You look up, the ceiling glistens, and suddenly you feel it, the breath of the cave shifting. The ice is no longer static. It's sagging, weakening, ready to let go. A crack pierces the silence, not a sharp one, but a groaning tear. The wall beside you shudders. You run, but ice is faster. It doesn't crumble. It folds. It crashes. It slams downward like an avalanche standing upright. A wall of solid winter collapses behind and before you, sealing you in a frozen coffin. You're not crushed, not fully. You're pinned, a leg, a hip, maybe your back. You scream, but the sound bounces off walls of ice now thick as concrete. Breath fogs, then freezes. Your body begins to seize. Blood slows, fingers go numb, hope dies faster than warmth. There's no escape, no rescue, only silence, broken by the faint creaks of the glacier continuing to shift, uncaring. You lie in stillness, encased in the very beauty that brought you here, your tomb transparent, your story frozen, unseen beneath a world that keeps on melting. Smothered by guano and dust in Batcave. There's a suffocating heaviness inside Batcaves that no one warns you about. It's not just the stench, thick, acrid, animal. It's the air itself. Cloaked in years of decay, bat guano builds up in great, sloping mounds, carpeting the cave floor like rotting earth. But beneath that carpet lies a trap, soft, unstable, breathing dust with every step. The caver enters, drawn by curiosity or the thrill of the unknown. Their boots crunch through layers of dried droppings, some older than generations. Each movement stirs the filth. A cloud rises, microscopic, invisible at first, but soon thick enough to feel. Spores, mold, ammonia, dried urine, and bacteria flood the air like poison fog. Breathing becomes effort. Each inhale is sharp, foul, burning. They cough. Then again, a deep, painful choke. Their lungs fill with particles they cannot see, cannot stop. Panic sets in as the throat constricts. Eyes water. Limbs stumble. They drop to their knees. Big mistake. The motion kicks up more filth. The dust swarms their face, clogs their nostrils, coats their tongue. They try to rise, but the air is gone, replaced by rot. They fall forward, mouth open, gasping. What fills their lungs now is not air, but years of excrement, disintegrated wings, and decay. The body convulses once, then stills. When others arrive, they find only a figure half buried in filth, face pressed into what once was life and now only feeds the cave. No wound, no fall, just breath that turned against its owner, choked by the air of the forgotten. Died of shock from compound fracture in remote location. The break was sharp, sickening, unmistakable, a snap that echoed through the cave like a gunshot, followed by the ragged scream of torn skin and shattered bone. It wasn't a fall from great height, just a misstep, a slick patch of rock, a moment of lost footing on an uneven surface. The leg buckled, twisted unnaturally, and then burst. The bone pierced through flesh, white and jagged, glistening beneath the headlamp's trembling light. Panic hit first, then pain, raw, pulsing animal. Blood flowed fast, staining the stone, pooling beneath the body. But what killed him wasn't blood loss. It was the body's betrayal, the sudden collapse of all internal systems in the face of trauma. Shock, cold and consuming, set in with ruthless speed. The skin turned pale, the breath shallow, eyes glazed. The mind floated somewhere between terror and silence. Muscles twitched, limbs trembled. The heart, once racing, began to slow, not from calm, but from overload. Help was hours away. The radio barely worked this deep. Every moment was colder than the last. The caving team did what they could, splints, blankets, whispered reassurances, but the body was already leaving. The fracture had opened more than flesh. It had opened a door into stillness, where pain was replaced by distance, where the voice faltered and the heartbeat faded. He died not screaming, not fighting, but fading, lost not to the wound itself, but to the shock that followed. In the silent dark, the body lay still. The cave, unmoved, held him there. Another reminder that down below, sometimes it's not the fall that kills. It's what comes after, crushed during underwater rock shift. Beneath the surface of a flooded cave, silence reigns. The only sound is your breath, slow, mechanical, echoing in your mask. As you drift through ancient corridors carved by water and time, every movement is deliberate, every turn calculated. But stone does not sleep, and underwater, it moves when it wants to, not when you're ready. You swim through a narrow passage, your hand grazes the cave wall, your flipper kicks gently to stay buoyant. The rock seems still, eternal, but deep beneath the surface, even the smallest shift, an unseen fracture, a bubble of gas, a ripple from above, can set the cave in motion. It starts with a vibration, a tremor in the stone beneath your hand. You freeze. A distant rumble muffled by water follows, then a sudden grinding groan. The passage you're in, tight, claustrophobic, becomes a trap. A boulder the size of a car shifts just inches, but underwater, that's enough. It moves like a falling god, slow, relentless. Before you can reverse, it crashes down. The impact is thunder without sound. Your torso is caught. The world is instantly reduced to pressure and pain. Your ribs collapse inward. Air explodes from your lungs in a useless scream. You're not dead yet. That's the horror. You feel everything. The crushing, the water rushing around your pinned body, the last wisp of breath escaping. You blink against your mask, blood clouding your vision. You're alone, buried in silence. And the cave, its structure forever changed, doesn't remember you were ever there. Perished in mudslide while caving in rainy season. The rainy season transforms caves into waiting traps. What was dry becomes slick. What was solid becomes unstable. Outside, rain drums the earth, harmless at first glance. But beneath the surface, every drop feeds the soil, saturating layers of clay, loosening rock, and swelling the ground like a ticking pulse. The caver moves deeper, unaware. The tunnel is narrow, winding through soft sediment. The walls moist but passable. The rain above continues, silent down here, unheard through stone. Then the ground shifts, just slightly. A squelch beneath the boot, a droop of the ceiling, a trickle from a crack that wasn't there an hour ago. Then everything breaks. It begins with a low, rumbling groan. The cave shudders, not violently, but with purpose. The walls weep brown water. Then comes the surge, a sudden rush of mud, thick and cold and unstoppable. It doesn't splash or pour. It consumes. It crashes into the tunnel like liquid stone, pulling everything with it. The caver turns to flee, but the floor is gone. The exit is swallowed. Mud forces its way into the mouth, the nose, the eyes. The body is thrown down, twisted, dragged beneath a suffocating tide of earth. It fills every space, crushes the chest, pins the limbs. There's no light, no sound beyond the gurgling roar of soil swallowing air. Struggling is useless. Breathing is impossible. Screams are muted by sludge. When the mud settles, the cave is still again. The body is entombed in wet earth, unseen, unfound, another shape hidden beneath the rain-fed silence. The world above never hears. The cave remembers, suffocated by candle smoke in unventilated chamber. The flame was small, flickering, warm, almost comforting in the suffocating darkness. In ancient caves and forgotten catacombs, before LED lights and modern tech, flame was life. A candle meant vision, a candle meant hope, but in a sealed chamber, deep within the earth where the air does not stir, fire takes more than it gives. The caver lit it to see the carvings, ancient markings on the walls, worn by time. The chamber was tight, stone-locked, no wider than a closet. The flame burned steady, but something changed. The oxygen, limited, precious, was already disappearing, and the candle fed on it hungrily. What it gave back was smoke, subtle, gray, barely visible at first, curling against the low ceiling. The caver didn't notice at first. They knelt close, tracing symbols, breathing deeply, but then came the cough, a dry rasp, sharp in the throat, then another. The air had turned bitter, acrid. The flame, once yellow, flickered orange, then blue. Smoke thickened like a veil, filling the chamber from the top down. The lungs begged for air. The chest heaved, but each breath brought pain, heat, soot. They turned to crawl back. only to find the tunnel behind them narrowed and choked. The smoke followed, vision blurred. The flame went out, and with it, everything. The body was later found curled against the stone, soot-blackened lips parted, hands pressed to the wall as if reaching for escape. There were no wounds, no fall, just the silent theft of breath by something meant to protect. In a place where air does not forgive, even a single candle can become a killer. Died of tetanus from rusty climbing gear injury. It began with a scrape, just a shallow wound, skin split open by a jagged edge of old, forgotten iron. The carabiner had been left behind years ago, corroded by moisture and time, its surface crusted in reddish-brown decay. You barely noticed the cut. Maybe you rinsed it with your canteen. Maybe not. In the dim, damp air of the cave, it seemed insignificant. You kept moving, but tetanus doesn't announce itself with sirens. It waits, silently. Bacteria from rusted metal slip beneath your skin and begin their quiet invasion. Hours pass, then days. You feel off, stiffness in your jaw, like you slept wrong, a tension in your neck. You write it off to climbing strain, but soon your body betrays you. The cramps start subtly, twitches in your legs, tightness in your stomach, then your spine locks, your throat constricts. You try to speak, but your jaw clamps shut. It's not fear this time, it's your muscles turning against you. Every nerve flares as your body contorts. You arch backward in agony, locked in a silent scream. You're still in the cave, trapped not by stone, but by flesh. Alone, mouth sealed, limbs frozen, breathing becomes a war. Your heart pounds faster and faster until it can't. The pain is exquisite, relentless, blinding. And then release, darkness, quiet. They'll find your body days later, twisted in a posture of violent tension, eyes wide, mouth clenched tight, all because of a wound no wider than a thumbnail, delivered by gear once trusted. The rust didn't kill you, it only carried what would. Crushed in makeshift caving tunnel collapse. There's a false confidence that comes with man-made tunnels, dug not by nature, but by hands that believe they can shape the earth without consequence. These makeshift passages, carved hastily into loose rock and soil, are often the product of ambition or desperation. They seem sturdy at first, shored with old wood, maybe supported by scrap beams, often wet and bowed with age, but time doesn't respect shortcuts, and neither does gravity. The caver crawls through one of these narrow constructs, barely high enough to lift their head. The walls sweat, dirt trickles from overhead. Every creak of wood sounds like a warning too easy to ignore. Then comes the snap. A sharp crack, like a bone breaking, echoes from somewhere above. One support gives way, then another. The tunnel doesn't collapse in slow motion. It folds inward in an instant. The ceiling falls like a wave. Wood splinters, stone crashes, soil pours like a waterfall of concrete. The caver doesn't have time to scream. A beam strikes their shoulder, pinning them. The roof comes down next, slamming the body flat, ribs splintering, lungs forced empty. Their face is pressed into the dirt, mouth open, inhaling nothing but soil. Fingers twitch. One leg kicks once, then nothing. When the dust settles, there is silence. No one knows how deep the collapse goes. No one dares dig fast enough. All that remains is a mound where a tunnel used to be, the earth reclaiming what it never gave permission to be taken. The cave, always patient, always watching, closes its wound without apology. Impaled by old mining spike, in the dark heart of abandoned mines, history lingers in the rusted remains of men long gone. Iron spikes, once driven into rock with purpose and sweat, now lie forgotten, half buried in debris, corroded and jagged, waiting silently. These are not relics. They are weapons of time. The caver descends into the mine, unaware of what waits beneath the dust. The walls are narrow, the floor uneven. Light flashes across twisted rails, collapsed supports, old chains. A misplaced step sends their boots sliding down a mound of loose gravel. Gravity pulls, the body falls. There is no time to react. The spike, nearly invisible in the shadows, rises from the rubble like a fang. It pierces through clothing, then flesh. It enters low, through the thigh, the abdomen, or worse, the chest. The scream comes raw and immediate, echoing through the hollow shafts like a siren. Blood spills across rock blackened by decades of coal dust. The spike holds fast, anchored deep in stone, unmoved by pain or desperation. The caver claws at the air, fingers shaking, trying to pull free, but movement only tears more. The wound grows wider, redder. Breathing turns to choking. Shock sets in. The iron, rusted and sharp, poisons more than just flesh. It carries the decay of time, of rot, of things that were never meant to remain. Alone, pinned in the gut of a forgotten mind, the caver bleeds into the bones of history. No one hears, no one sees, just the iron, doing what it does best, waiting, taking, ending, died. During solo descent with failed rope, there's a silence that comes only with solitude underground, thick, heavy, almost sacred. When you descend alone, every sound is yours. The creak of your harness, the soft rasp of rope sliding through a belay device, the tap of your boots against stone. It feels intimate, controlled, like a conversation between you and the earth. But caves do not negotiate. You check your gear. The rope is old but familiar. It's held you before. You anchor it, feed it through, test your weight. It holds. You begin your descent, slow, steady, trusting the line that connects you to the world above. You go deeper, light fades, walls close in, the air grows colder. Then it happens. A sharp snap, not loud, but unmistakable. A twitch in your gut, then weightlessness. The rope gives way with a jerk that whips through your spine. You fall. The air rushes past in a blur of shadow. You don't scream. There's no time. Only the sound of your body gaining speed, of rock rushing upward. Then impact. Bones splinter. Your back breaks on first contact. Your head slams second. The cave floor doesn't echo. It absorbs. You lie there twisted, eyes staring up at the rope that now swings above you, frayed and useless. You're still. Your light flickers. Blood pools slowly beneath your cheek. The silence returns, but this time, it's final. No one saw you descend. No one hears you now. You placed your trust in a rope that couldn't hold it, and the cave never cared if you tied it right. Got stuck in an inverted chimney and passed from organ compression. An inverted chimney is a cruel feature, narrow, vertical, descending. Unlike normal passages, it offers no room to twist, no space to breathe. It lures the caver downward, step by cautious step, arms raised above the head, torso squeezed tight between walls that close ever so slightly with every foot of progress. You believe you'll fit. You always have before, but this time you don't. The moment of entrapment is quiet. Your hips catch. You exhale, trying to slip lower, and in doing so, your chest compresses deeper into the shaft. Your arms are pinned above you. There's no leverage, no way to push back. You try to pull up, but there's no space to bend, no handhold to grab. You are wedged, upside down, alone. Then comes the pressure. Your organs, not meant to exist inverted for long, begin to shift. Blood rushes to your head in heavy waves. Your abdomen swells against the rock. Breathing becomes shallow, tight. Every heartbeat echoes like thunder between your ears. Minutes pass, then hours. Your diaphragm strains to expand, but there's no room. Your lungs can't draw enough air. Your heart has to fight gravity just to circulate. You remain conscious longer than you want, long enough to panic, long enough to weep, but your body is losing. Veins swell, organs press against bone. Your chest feels like it's imploding. Eventually, your heart slows, not from fear, but from sheer mechanical failure. No rescue reaches you. No sound escapes the shaft. The cave, like a vice, holds you until your body simply stops trying to survive. bitten by spider and died of necrosis without treatment. Caves are sanctuaries for the unseen, for creatures that thrive in silence, in damp air, in places untouched by sunlight. Among them are spiders, evolved for darkness, their eyes pale, their legs delicate, their venom anything but. Hidden in cracks, nestled beneath loose stones or webbed corners, they wait, not to hunt humans, but to defend their space when disturbed. The bite is barely noticeable, a pinprick on the back of a hand as you brush past a wall. Maybe it stings for a moment. You look down, see nothing, and move on. Hours pass, then discomfort, then swelling. The skin tightens, bruises, burns. But you're deep in the cave, far from help, far from daylight, and you tell yourself it's nothing, a rash, an allergic itch. But the venom is already at work. Necrosis doesn't roar, it creeps. Cells begin to die beneath the surface. The skin blackens, flesh softens into rot. The pain becomes unbearable, each heartbeat sending waves of agony up your arm and into your chest. The smell follows, the sharp, sour scent of decay inside your own body. Infection takes hold, fever, vomiting, confusion. You try to walk, but your body falters. You collapse, curled in a corner of stone, delirious. There is no help coming. The cave does not care that death came not from a fall or a flood, but from a creature smaller than your fingertip. It only bears witness to your slow unraveling, your breath rattling in the cold air, your body feeding the silence. The spider is gone. The wound remains, black, wet, and final. Died of massive blood loss, from sharp cave crystals. Deep within untouched chambers, some caves grow beauty with a blade's edge. Selenite, gypsum, aragonite, crystals that shimmer like glass, fragile and deadly. They jut from the walls in perfect symmetry, some thin as needles, others as broad as swords. They seem ethereal, like frozen light, but when you slip near them, they are razors. You duck into a narrow corridor, drawn by a strange glow. Your headlamp reflects off the crystal blades, illuminating the passage like a frozen cathedral. The space is tight. You move slowly. Then one boot slips. Not a fall, just a lurch. And a crystal enters your thigh. It slides in like silence, clean and deep. You gasp, reach to steady yourself, and your hand catches another. It slices across your palm, severing skin, tendons, and vessels like wet paper. Blood spills instantly, not in trickles, but in gushes. You try to retreat, but the walls are teeth. Every movement tears another line across your body. You stumble back, falling onto a bed of glittering spikes. Panic sets in. You clutch your leg, your side, your arm. Blood pours over the crystals, turning them red, surreal. You scream, but it's swallowed by stone. You try to stand, but your vision tunnels. Your body weakens with each heartbeat, each pulse painting the cavern in crimson. Eventually, you collapse. Not from a fall, but from the betrayal of your own blood escaping faster than you can hold it in. The crystals remain untouched, their beauty sharpened by your dying breath. You came to witness wonder, but the cave offered a lesson. Even light, when hardened by time, can cut deeper than fear. Suffocated when backpack pinned, chest against rock. Sometimes death comes not from a fall or a collapse, but from something as simple and as cruel as your own gear. The backpack, packed tight with rope, food, tools, survival, becomes a traitor in the narrow belly of the cave. You crawl forward, belly to stone, chest brushing the cold earth, walls so tight your arms can barely move. The tunnel is claustrophobic but manageable, until it narrows just enough. You push through the gap, head first, feet behind, trusting momentum to carry you forward. But the top of the passage dips. The cave presses down. The pack, bulky, rigid, unforgiving, catches on the ceiling. You're stuck. Your body is trapped between stone and weight. Your chest can't rise. You try to inhale, but there's no room. Each breath is smaller than the last. You reverse. Nothing. You push forward. Impossible. Your ribs grind against the floor with every wheezing attempt to pull air. Your heart races as oxygen thins. Panic blooms in your throat. You know what's happening. You rip at the straps, but the pack doesn't budge. You scream, but there's no space for sound. Your arms are pinned, useless. Your lungs burn. Your vision blurs. The cave feels tighter now, not just around your body, but inside your skull. Blood rushes to your face, heat rising, thoughts flickering like a dying light. And then stillness. The weight doesn't lift. The backpack doesn't care. It held what you needed to survive, until it became the reason you couldn't, and the cave, unmoved, remains your last breath's witness. Lost consciousness from CO2, drowned in ankle-deep water. Some deaths are loud, violent, chaotic, impossible to miss. Others arrive quietly, invisibly, through a change in the air. Caves breathe, just like us. But sometimes, the breath they exhale is deadly. Carbon dioxide, heavier than oxygen, pools in the lowest parts of a cave. Silent, scentless, waiting in the hollows no one thinks to fear. The caver descends deeper into a low, narrow tunnel. The ground is wet. Ankle-deep water glistens beneath their boots, trickling between stone ridges. The air feels thick, but not alarming. Their light flickers off the water. They press forward. Then something changes. Breathing becomes harder. The lungs strain. At first, it feels like exhaustion, then dizziness, a tremble in the fingers, a strange numbness behind the eyes. They try to stand straighter, but the tunnel is too low. Oxygen is gone here, replaced by an invisible weight they cannot escape. Their brain begins to fade, thoughts slurring into confusion. They sink to one knee, then collapse, face first. The water is shallow, laughably so, but the body is limp, unmoving. The mouth lies just below the surface. Breathing doesn't stop because of drowning. It stops because there's nothing left to inhale, just warm CO2 and cave water filling the lungs slowly, gently. When they're found, if they are, they look peaceful, almost asleep, just another figure curled in the dark. No blood, no broken bones, just a face half submerged in water too shallow to fear. But it wasn't the water that killed them. It was the air, or the lack of it, and the silence that came after it. Died in panic, after headlamp failure. Deep underground light is everything underground. It's not just vision, it's time, direction, sanity. A headlamp is your heartbeat in the dark, your only thread tying you to the surface world. So, when it dies, it doesn't fade. It vanishes. In one blink, the cave swallows your reality whole. You're deep, hours from the entrance. The path behind you was winding, tight, confusing. You've been alone, but calm. Until now, the beam begins to flicker. You tap the casing, hold your breath. The light steadies for a moment, then darkness. Total, unnatural, eternal. There's no silhouette, no outline. Your hand inches from your face might as well not exist. Panic creeps in instantly. You reach for spare batteries, but your fingers tremble. You drop one. It clatters, echoes wildly, then silence. The shadows don't move, but your mind does. Fast, violently. You breathe faster, too fast. You stumble forward, hands outstretched, groping for memory. Every wall feels unfamiliar. Every step could be a pit. The air feels tighter. You spin. You whisper, then shout, then scream. The cave gives nothing back. Your mind fractures. You run. You don't know where. You trip over unseen stone, slam your head against cold rock. Blood drips into your mouth. You scream again. You scratch the walls until your fingernails split. Your heart pounds like it's trying to escape you. The fear isn't of death. It's of forever. You were alive when the light went out. You died when the silence answered. They'll find your body curled in a corner, battered, fingernails torn, pupils wide. The battery's still good in your pocket, but the cave doesn't care about logic. It only knows how to wait and watch. Smothered under sand in sandstone caves breathe with fragility. Their walls crumble with age, their floors drift with centuries of dust. Unlike solid rock, sandstone hides its danger in silence, in the way it erodes grain by grain until the ceiling above is no longer ceiling, but a curtain of death suspended by time alone. The sand above you doesn't announce itself, it waits. You crawl beneath a low arch, admiring the soft texture of the walls, the way they flake under your fingers. The floor is smooth, fine, an almost pleasant place to pause. Then, without sound, the roof lets go. It doesn't fall like stone, it pours. A sudden avalanche of powdered earth crashes down onto your back, your neck, your head. You scream, but your mouth fills with grit. You try to rise, but each movement sucks you deeper. The sand flows fast, heavy, liquid and solid all at once. Within seconds, you're buried chest deep. Seconds more, and you can't move your arms. You inhale instinctively and choke on dust. There is no oxygen here, only pressure. You thrash, but it's useless. The more you move, the faster it settles. Sand packs into your ears, your mouth, behind your eyes. Every breath drags more particles into your lungs. You try to scream again, but now your jaw can't open. Darkness creeps inward, not from a lack of light, but from the panic-induced tunnel your mind races through. You suffocate not in water or smoke, but in silence, in stillness. The sand holds you gently, like a blanket, and doesn't let go. By the time it stills, you are part of the cave, buried in its breathless cradle, unseen, forgotten, burned alive in flammable gas. Ignition. Deep beneath the surface, where the air grows stale and movement stirs the unseen, certain gases lie dormant, methane, hydrogen sulfide, or other volatile ghosts trapped within rock. You don't smell them, you don't see them. They build imperceptibly, pooling in quiet pockets where no light has touched. All it takes is a spark. The caver enters a chamber, unaware that every breath draws in invisible fuel. Their light flickers, a headlamp, a chemical reaction, a static discharge from gear brushing metal, and then ignition. There is no warning. The explosion is sudden, complete, and merciless. The air becomes flame. A roar of fire consumes the chamber in less than a second, igniting every molecule of gas around. The heat is instant, blistering, unbearable. Flesh peels before nerves can scream. Clothes melt into skin. The caver tries to move, but the oxygen is gone, turned to smoke and agony. Every breath scorches the throat, lungs inflaming from the inside out. They thrash, blind and burning, against stone that offers no escape. The fire dances along the ceiling, feeding on what little air remains, until all that's left is silence and the stench of scorched earth and skin. The light is gone, the gas is gone, and the caver, blackened, crumpled, fused to rock, is left behind as proof that even in the coldest places, fire waits for its chance. The cave didn't explode, the air did, and in that breath, death became light. Died in landslide. While exiting a cave, the exit was in sight. After hours in the damp, echoing dark, your eyes adjusted to the soft hint of daylight. It was faint, pale, but real, freedom breaking through shadow. You were tired, maybe aching, maybe muddy, but you felt relief swell in your chest, the kind of quiet joy that comes from knowing the worst is over. Then the earth moved. It started with a vibration under your boots, a subtle shift, pebbles trickling down the slope ahead like nervous fingers tapping a warning. You paused, instinct tugging at the back of your neck, but there was no time to think. The slope above the entrance gave way. The hillside collapsed in a roar of dust and fury. You turned to run, but the stones were faster. The light vanished behind a curtain of dirt and boulders. A sound like thunder crashed around you, shaking the ribs of the earth. A massive rock struck your shoulder, sent you to your knees, then another hit your leg, then your back. The weight pinned you in place before you even realized what was happening. Dust filled your lungs. You tried to scream, but the breath was choked out of you. You were buried, not instantly crushed, but trapped, immobile, air thinning, the sun so close, now gone behind tons of shifting soil. You could feel it above you, life, light, sky, but all you knew was darkness and the pressure of stone slowly settling over your bones. You didn't die deep within the cave, you died reaching for the outside, reaching for the world that almost let you go. Trapped in cave due to ice dam formation. At first, it's just water, crisp, flowing, harmless, a glacial cave system winding beneath frozen earth where meltwater trickles beside your boots and cold air hisses from narrow vents. You don't worry, the exit is close, the path is familiar, but in glacial caves, change happens silently. All it takes is one shift in temperature, one blockage in the wrong place, and the living tunnel becomes a trap. The water slows, that's the first sign, a subtle stillness where there was once a steady current. Then the air feels heavier, the temperature drops sharply. You return to the entrance, and it's gone. Where there was once open space, now there is a wall, translucent, rippling, solid, an ice dam. You touch it. It's thick, brutally cold, unbreakable with bare hands. You pound on it, yell, strike it with tools, but nothing gives. Behind you, the cave continues to breathe, its walls dripping, its floor slick. The water level rises, minutes pass, then hours. The cold crawls into your bones, your gloves stiffen, your breath fogs thick in the air. You shiver uncontrollably, trying to move, to dig, to think, but the ice grows stronger, denser. It expands with quiet malice, sealing every crack, every escape. The water is at your knees now. Your voice breaks from screaming. Eventually, you sit, soaked and freezing, staring at the blue-white wall that wasn't there before. You were never buried, never injured, just locked away, left to freeze alive in a beautiful prison made of breath, water, and silence. The cave doesn't collapse. It forgets you existed. Suffocated due to torch gas poisoning. Before modern lighting, fire was the caver's only guide. Torches, oil lamps, carbide lamps sputtering open flame into darkness. Their flicker brought safety, warmth, direction. But in the wrong chamber, without ventilation, fire turns traitor, not with flame, but with what it leaves behind. The caver descends into a pocket of the cave where air is still, unmoving. The torch hisses, feeding on oxygen and releasing carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and vaporized chemicals. At first, it's subtle. The warmth feels comforting. The shadows dance, but the flame burns oxygen faster than it can be replaced. The gases stay, swirl, build, unseen, unsmelled. The first sign is a headache, then dizziness, a tremble in the legs. The caver blinks, waves of nausea washing over like heat from the rock. But there's no heat. Their breath grows shallow. The torch burns brightly. It masks the truth. They sit down, dizzy. The light flickers, not from fuel running low, but from the way the brain begins to fail. They try to stand, but their muscles betray them. Vision narrows. The heart pounds, then slows. The torch hisses on, faithful, unknowing, as its bearer slumps to the ground. The flame continues to consume, even as the body beside it stops breathing altogether. There are no burn marks, no impact wounds, just stillness, a soft blue flame and a body, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, lips faintly blue. Death came not by violence, but by breath, stolen slowly, invisibly, until there was no more to steal. The torch didn't flicker out, it burned on, long after its light was needed. Eaten alive by rats, urban legend, still disturbing. The air was thick, musky, wrong. Somewhere beneath the surface, in an abandoned tunnel, long forgotten by maps, you found a space others had sealed off. The rock was cracked, the walls were clawed. You told yourself it was nothing, maybe bats, maybe erosion. But then the silence shifted, broken by a low rustle that echoed like whispering teeth. You paused, listened. The sound came again, closer this time. Dozens of tiny limbs, scratching, skittering. Then eyes, dozens of them, reflected in the beam of your light like tiny red lanterns. Rats, not the kind that flee, not the kind that fear. These watched, then they charged. At first, it seemed absurd. Small bodies, quick feet, but they didn't run past you. They climbed, they bit, one on your leg, another on your arm. You screamed, kicked, swung your light, but more came, hundreds, driven by starvation, instinct, or something older. Their teeth were needles, their hunger unstoppable. You fell. They swarmed your chest, your face. One chewed into your ear canal, another slipped into your pant leg. Your gloves tore as you tried to rip them off, only to feel more crawling beneath your clothes. They didn't kill you quickly. They ate you alive, starting with the soft places, lips, fingers, eyelids. Your screams echoed, but no one was coming. The cave heard and did nothing. Hours passed, then stillness. All that remained was shredded gear, scattered bones, and red eyes vanishing back into the walls, silent now, full, and waiting, crushed while attempting to dynamite own escape. Desperation rewrites logic. When the passage behind you collapses, when your light dims and your food runs out, and no sound answers your cries, it's easy to believe that force might grant freedom. A stick of dynamite becomes hope, not madness, not recklessness, just a last chance to live. You're trapped behind tons of rock, sealed in by a cave-in no one saw. You try everything, digging with bleeding fingers, pressing against boulders, listening for movement on the other side. But the air is thinning, your limbs are weak, and the fuse in your pocket, once meant for deeper exploration, whispers a dangerous promise. Maybe, just maybe, you can blow a path back to light. You measure the space, wedge the explosive in a crack, shield your face behind your pack. You light the fuse with trembling hands. Seconds tick. The blast isn't heroic. It's thunder inside a coffin. The explosion tears through stone, but not just forward. The ceiling above you crumbles like wet ash. Before you can even scream, it falls. Chunks the size of skulls, slabs that weigh tons. Your ribs break, your lungs collapse. One boulder pins your pelvis, another caves in your chest. You're alive, but barely. Eyes open, blood flooding your mouth, heartbeat skipping. You thought you could carve freedom with fire. Instead, the cave closes tighter than before, now splintered and angry. You lit the fuse to escape, but in the end, all it did was hurry death's arrival and bury you a second time, this time by your own hand. Attacked and killed by territorial animal, e.g. bear. The cave felt empty, still, the kind of quiet that draws you in deeper, tempts you with its hush, its ancient breath. You step softly, light sweeping across stone and dust. Maybe there's a scent, musk, sour, thick, but you dismiss it. You tell yourself it's just the earth, but you're not alone. In the darkness ahead, something stirs, a low grunt, the scrape of claws, then silence again. You freeze, your heart punches your ribs, you raise your light and catch the eyes, massive, glowing, watching. A bear. It doesn't growl first, it charges. The cave erupts in motion. The roar fills every inch of space. It's not just sound, it's force, thunder in a tunnel. You turn to run, but the space is too narrow, too uneven. Your boot catches on a stone, you fall. It's on you before you can scream. The impact knocks the air from your lungs. The claws come down, tearing through jacket, through flesh. The teeth follow. Your body thrashes beneath hundreds of pounds of rage and instinct. You punch, kick, gasp, but it doesn't stop. It's not defending, it's eliminating. Your vision blurs, blood pools beneath your back. You hear your own bones snap. You taste dirt and iron, and in the final seconds, there's no noise, just the weight of the creature breathing against you, hot and wild, a presence ancient and merciless. Then stillness. Your body remains twisted on stone, broken open, the cave smeared with the memory of your mistake. You thought it was empty. You forgot nature never leaves her doors unlocked. Fell into crevice during cave exploration with no rope. The crevice was barely visible, a shadow stitched into the stone, a slit in the earth too narrow to demand attention, but wide enough to take everything. You stepped forward, alone, exploring with confidence. No rope, no anchor, just instinct and the buzz of adrenaline. The floor looked solid. Your foot landed with trust. Then the ground was gone. You dropped. It wasn't a scream that came first. It was silence, shock, the weightless horror of gravity claiming you without warning. The walls blurred, streaks of stone slicing past. There was no time to brace, no ledge to catch, no rope to jerk you back into safety. Just a void that narrowed as you fell deeper, swallowed faster. Impact came like lightning. Your body crumpled against jagged rock. One leg snapped sideways, bone piercing through skin. Your back cracked. Pain lit up your chest like fire. But you were alive, breathing, broken but aware, and completely trapped. The crevice was too narrow to move, too deep to be seen. Your voice echoed once, then was muffled by stone. You reached up with one good arm. Nothing. The light flickered on your helmet, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts. You cried out again, but only the rock answered. Cold, unblinking. Hours passed, then days. Your wounds festered, your throat dried. Sleep never came, only fading pulses and the creeping numbness of blood loss and cold. You were buried in a crack too small for rescue, too deep for chance, and too quiet for memory. You fell without a rope, and the earth never let you go. Died from extreme altitude sickness in mountain cave. High altitude caves are deceptive, nestled in icy cliffs, veiled in clouds, surrounded by silence so pure it rings in your ears. Just reaching them is an ordeal, thin air, bitter cold, and when you enter, the illusion deepens. Rock shields you from wind, muffles the storm. It feels like refuge, but the enemy isn't outside, it's inside your blood. You don't notice it at first, a little dizziness, fatigue, but you've been climbing for days. Fatigue is expected. You press on, deeper into the chamber carved by glacier melt and time. The cold sharpens your breath. The silence is profound. Then the headache comes. It builds behind your eyes, dull and pulsing, then sharper. Your steps become clumsy. You pause, unsure why the walls feel like they're tilting. Your hands shake. You sit, but your pulse races like you're sprinting. Your lungs fight for breath, but there's nothing to grab. High-altitude cerebral edema has begun. You vomit. Your thoughts drift, then spiral. You forget where you are. You try to stand, but your legs betray you. The cave spins. You see lights where there are none. Then the seizures begin. Blood vessels in your brain swell under pressure. Your body can't survive. You lie down, not from choice, but collapse. In the thin silence, your breath slows. You stare at the frozen ceiling, lips blue, pulse fading. Death isn't violent. It's slow, soft, like sinking beneath ice. You didn't fall. You didn't drown. You simply rose too high, too fast, and your brain unraveled, quietly, completely, in a beautiful prison above the clouds. Skewered by cave floor spikes in flooded tunnels, lull you with their silence. Cool, glassy, serene. You glide weightlessly, your body a shadow between stalactites above and darkness below. The light from your headlamp cuts through the blue, illuminating only a few feet ahead. Beneath you, the cave floor lies hidden under the shimmer, deceptively smooth, seemingly flat. But some caves hide blades in stillness. You're swimming carefully, lungs steady, fins slow. You descend slightly to pass beneath a low overhang, adjusting your buoyancy just enough to dip. You don't see the hazard below. Slender stone spikes formed over millennia, hardened daggers of calcite or limestone rising like spears from the cave floor, their tips honed by dripping time. A sudden shift in buoyancy, maybe from panic, maybe a simple miscalculation, pulls you down just inches too far. The spike enters. It doesn't feel like piercing at first, just pressure, a thud, then pain, unimaginable, searing, screaming through your core. One spike drives up through your abdomen, another rips your leg. You try to push off, but your body has betrayed you. Your limbs flail, your oxygen bubbles erupt, but the damage is done. Your blood clouds the water, warm ribbons swirling upward in slow, ghost-like trails. You try to breathe, but the pain knocks the air from your lungs. You try to scream, but water fills your throat. You die impaled, not by accident, but by the geometry of the earth itself, sharp, ancient, patient. The cave remains silent. Your light fades slowly, flickering across the spikes, now painted with the last thing your heart ever gave, got trapped behind a fallen companion's body. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for one person to crawl through. You followed closely, knees grinding against stone, helmet scraping the ceiling, flashlight illuminating only the boots in front of you. It felt safe in its routine. One breath, one crawl, one voice ahead guiding you forward, until it stopped. There was a sound, not loud, just a thud, then silence. You called their name, no answer. You pushed forward, heart racing. Then you saw them, your friend, collapsed mid-crawl, body limp, wedged in the passage like a cork in a bottle. Their foot blocked your advance. Their torso filled the entire gap. There was no room to move around, no space to turn back. You were sealed in, not by stone, but by the still weight of someone you trusted. You tried to shake them, scream, kick. Nothing moved. Their body, heavy with death or unconsciousness, pressed harder into the narrow path the more you struggled. You were now in a grave shaped by another's end, and it was getting smaller. Your light dimmed. Air grew thin. You lay there, pinned, just inches from escape, your face against the back of a lifeless friend. Every breath echoed back at you. Every second deepened the panic. Blood pounded in your ears. You sobbed, not from fear alone, but from guilt. You couldn't help them, and now you couldn't save yourself. You didn't die from falling or drowning. You died because someone else did first, and their body became the wall between you and the surface. Your final view, your final touch, your final companion in the dark. Froze to death, waiting for rescue. It was supposed to be a short expedition, a mapped route, a clear descent, solid communication, but one wrong turn, one slip into a deeper crevice, and you were suddenly alone, trapped, injured, and cut off from the warmth of movement, of hope. You radioed for help. You heard their voices. "We're coming," they said, and you believed them. But the cave was cold, not just cold, piercing. It crept into your gloves, your boots, beneath your clothes, into your bones. You tried to stay awake. You slapped your arms, stomped your feet. You hummed songs through clenched teeth to keep the panic out. But as hours passed, the warmth slipped away like breath into the stone. Your fingers went first, then your toes. Numbness disguised itself as peace. You stopped shaking, not because you were warm, but because your body no longer had the strength to fight. Your thoughts slowed. You saw things in the dark that weren't there. Memories, shapes, the light of a rescuer's headlamp that never arrived. You whispered to yourself, just to hear a voice. "Not long now," you said. "They're close." But the cold was closer. You curled into yourself, limbs locked stiff, skin pale and cracked. Ice formed in your hair, on your lashes, across your lips. Eventually, your breath faded to mist, then to silence. You didn't scream, you didn't beg, you waited. And when the rescue team finally arrived, they found a body not panicked, not twisted, but quiet, arms crossed, eyes closed, as if you had simply fallen asleep while the cave held you, gently, forever. Punctured lung from rib injury, drowned in blood. It wasn't a deadly fall, not at first, just a misstep, a foot sliding on damp rock, a body twisting awkwardly, crashing sideways against an unyielding wall. You groaned, Breath knocked from your chest, your ribs screaming. Pain bloomed like fire through your side. You could still move, still crawl. You told yourself it wasn't bad. You told yourself you could finish the climb, the crawl, the route. But you were wrong. One rib had fractured, splintered like dry wood, and the edge turned inward, sharp as any knife. With every movement, it cut deeper. You coughed. It hurt. Then again. The third time it was wet. You spat into your hand. Blood. Warm. Foamy. Your heart skipped. Your breathing quickened. Inside your chest, the rib pierced your lung. The air no longer stayed in your body. It hissed out where it didn't belong, while blood filled the empty space. You tried to slow your breathing, to calm the rising terror, but every gasp brought more fluid. Your lungs didn't inflate. They gurgled. Your chest tightened. Your vision narrowed. You tried to sit up. Blood poured into your throat. You were drowning, but not in water, in yourself. You clawed at the rock, gasping, choking. Blood ran from your mouth, staining your shirt, your fingers, the floor. You weren't suffocating on airlessness. You were suffocating on your own life pouring in reverse. Then everything slowed. Your body trembled, then stopped. One more breath tried to rise. It didn't. You lay still, staring upward into darkness, lungs filled not with fear, but with the flood of your own undoing. The cave watched and kept breathing. You did not. Died from being wedged between shifting boulders. They weren't supposed to move. The boulders had sat there for centuries, massive, ancient still. They formed a narrow passage between chambers, a tight squeeze you believed you could pass through. You tested the space, measured your shoulders, took a breath, slipped in slowly, carefully, believing the stone would hold. But caves remember nothing, and stone owes no promises. As you wriggled forward, a deep guttural groan echoed through the rock. Then a shudder, not an earthquake, just gravity reasserting itself. A single boulder shifted half an inch. That was all it took. The gap collapsed. You were caught between titans. One rock pinned your chest, another your hip. The squeeze became crushing. Your ribs strained with each breath. You screamed, but sound died in the cracks. You tried to pull free, felt your skin tear, your muscles stretched to the edge of snapping. Nothing gave. Then came the stillness. The unbearable pressure became constant, a vice of stone locking your body in place, slowly cutting off circulation. Your hands turned numb. Your legs trembled, then stopped moving. Blood couldn't reach where it needed to. Your heart pounded harder, then weaker. The pain was searing, then distant, then terrifyingly absent. You lay frozen, not by cold, but by the will of the earth. The air was stale. Your mouth was dry. Your mind drifted between clarity and dreaming. No escape, no movement, no second chance. You died not in motion, but in compression, squeezed into a stillness so absolute, even the cave seemed to forget you were ever part of it. Slipped on algae-covered cave floor and cracked skull. The cave floor looked solid, damp, yes, but harmless. A smooth stretch of stone shimmering beneath your light, flecked with moisture, like polished marble from time's hand. You didn't notice the algae, a thin film of green-black slick, silent and waiting. It took one step, one confident stride. Your boot lost traction. Your body lifted for an instant, just long enough for panic to rise, and then gravity reclaimed you. You didn't fall far, barely a meter, but you fell wrong. The back of your head struck a jagged lip of stone with a sickening crack, a sound more felt than heard. Your limbs twitched. Light burst behind your eyes like fireworks in pitch black, then nothing. At first, you breathed. You may have even blinked, but blood spilled across the floor beneath your skull, thick, slow, silent. You lay there, one leg bent beneath you, one hand still clutching the strap of your pack. Your eyes open, but unfocused. The light from your helmet flared across the ceiling, then dimmed. It wasn't the fall that killed you. It was the quiet after. No rescuers, no dramatic collapse, just the slow leak of life onto stone, smoothed by centuries, made treacherous by the gentlest layer of growth. Algae, soft, simple, ancient, had no intention. It didn't pull you down. It simply existed, unnoticed, underfoot. You came to the cave seeking wonder. You found it, just not in the way you imagined. A skull split wide, a pool of red darkening the green, and silence, broken only by the distant drip of water, echoing where your footsteps should have continued. Bitten by cave-dwelling centipede. With fatal reaction, the centipede didn't warn you. It didn't hiss or strike with rage. It simply emerged, from beneath a rock or from a pocket in the cave wall, legs rippling in silence. You weren't expecting life here, in this cold, forgotten place. The ground was damp. You were focused on your footing. Maybe your hand brushed the stone beside it. Maybe your arm came too close. Then the bite, a flash of heat, small but sharp, like a pin driven deep into flesh. You flinched, instinctively swatted it away. Its body vanished into the crevices like smoke. You stared at the twin punctures on your wrist. Tiny, almost nothing, just another insect, just a sting. But then it began. The burning spread first, slow, then accelerating. Your arm throbbed. Then your fingers curled involuntarily, cramped by pain. Your skin turned red, then mottled. You felt heat build in your face, your chest, your neck. You started to sweat. Your heart pounded. Breathing grew fast and thin. The cave spun around you. Your throat began to close. You clawed at your pack for anything, epinephrine, water, something, but there was nothing to stop what had already started. Anaphylaxis hit hard. Blood vessels swelled, airway constricted. You collapsed to your knees, then your stomach. Your face struck cold stone. Your last thoughts weren't of the creature, but of the helplessness, of how small the wound was, of how silent the cave had become. You didn't fall to a beast or a storm. You died to something no longer than your hand, something that vanished while your body shut down, breath by desperate breath, in the loneliest dark on earth. Died of exhaustion while trying to dig way out. The collapse wasn't total, but it was enough to seal the passage behind you in a suffocating wall of dirt, gravel, and broken stone. One moment you were crawling through the tunnel. The next, the earth shifted with a sound like thunder swallowing its own voice. You turned back to find the path gone, not vanished, buried. You didn't scream, not yet. You moved. Your hands clawed at the debris, bare fingers ripping into stone and packed earth. You pulled. You scraped. Every rock dislodged sent two more tumbling into its place. Dust choked your throat. Your nails bent and tore, blood slicking your fingertips as you dug harder, faster. You told yourself this was temporary, that someone would come, that you could do this. But time didn't listen. You didn't stop, not when your arms began to shake, not when your breath came in gas, not when your muscles screamed with acid. The panic drove you. Every inch gained was erased by collapse. Every shift of rubble brought fresh suffocation. You coughed until you tasted iron. You wept without knowing. Your heartbeat roared in your ears like a war drum. Then, failure, not of the tunnel, of your body. Your arms gave out. You collapsed beside the mound, chest heaving, vision swimming. You tried to rise, to dig once more, but the will had drained. You had nothing left. Darkness pressed in, not from the cave, but from within. You died face down in the dirt, surrounded by the hopeless shape of your own escape attempt. The cave didn't kill you with a fall or a flood. It let you try. It let you believe. And then it watched, as belief was buried with you. Impaled on rusty ladder rungs, it was meant to be your way out, a vertical shaft with an old metal ladder, bolted into the rock, long abandoned, worn thin by decades of moisture, silence, and decay. The rungs were coated in rust, flaking like brittle scabs, but they held, or so you believed. You climbed slowly, breath echoing in the narrow shaft, every movement careful, deliberate, one hand above the other, one boot at a time. Then came the break. A rung gave way beneath your weight with a metallic shriek, and in an instant, you fell backward. You didn't plummet far, just enough for gravity to twist your body against the ladder, enough for the jagged metal teeth to reach up and catch you. One of the broken rungs pierced your abdomen, not a clean stab, a tear, a ripping. Your scream was muffled by stone. You tried to move, but every twitch dragged rusted iron deeper into flesh, through organs, into spine. You hung there, suspended on a rung that had become a spike, your lifeline turned executioner. Blood soaked your shirt, your pants, the ladder. It mixed with rust, turned the metal slick and dark. Your grip weakened, your legs kicked, then twitched, then stopped. The pain didn't fade. It bloomed, wide and cold, until your limbs felt foreign. You died halfway up the exit, halfway to air, halfway to light. They found you impaled, arms slack, body swaying gently like a forgotten puppet. The ladder hadn't collapsed completely. It had simply waited, for one hand too trusting, for one moment too careless. And then it took. Consumed by a cave collapse, caused by illegal mining. The cave wasn't always dangerous. It was stable, old, vast, untouched in places where sunlight had never reached. You entered with caution, knowing its beauty, trusting its stillness. But others had come before you, not to explore, but to extract. Illegally, quietly, with drills and picks that had no permits and no respect for the delicate architecture of Earth. They hollowed out veins in secret, removed the weight-bearing stone, left voids behind walls and ceilings that looked whole but were fractured, shells of rock barely clinging to form. The signs were invisible. You stepped beneath one of them. It happened in a blink. The ceiling gave first, a soft groan, like breath held too long. Then everything above you moved. It didn't fall as one. It shattered. Slabs broke free. Chunks the size of cars crashed down with unstoppable weight. Dust erupted around you, thick as smoke. You tried to run. You didn't make it. Stones struck your back, your legs. A rib snapped, then another. The floor gave way too, cracking beneath you, weakened from both above and below. You weren't just buried, you were swallowed. You lay crushed beneath thousands of pounds, ribs, piercing lungs, one arm pinned at a grotesque angle, your body folded by force. You couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. The dust filled your mouth, blood filled your throat. No one came. The ones who destroyed the cave never returned. The illegal mine left no records, no maps, no rescue. You became part of the cave's silence, your body encased in the very collapse they caused, not by nature, not by accident, but by human greed, leaving you behind as collateral, forgotten, buried, erased, crushed by friends' falling body. You were below, steadying the rope, watching every careful movement from the ledge above. Trust was everything in that moment. Trust in the harness, in the knots, in the silence between two people who know how to move through stone together. The cave stretched high above you like a mouth frozen mid-scream, but you weren't afraid. You were waiting. Then the scream came. It was sharp, sudden, a boot slipping on slick rock, a panicked shout echoing down the shaft. You looked up and saw your friend falling, arms flailing, eyes wide. The rope hadn't caught, the anchor had failed, or wasn't clipped. Gravity had taken over, and they were coming straight for you. You had no time to react. The impact was instant, brutal. Their full weight slammed into your shoulders, then your spine, driving you to the cave floor like a nail. Bones snapped. Your ribs cracked under the force. Your head struck stone with a sound that silenced thought. You couldn't move, could barely breathe. They were unconscious, maybe already gone. But their body, once familiar, once trusted, was now an unbearable weight, crushing the life from yours. You couldn't shift them, couldn't scream. Your lungs wheezed beneath the pressure. Blood pooled where you lay entangled. Your last vision, the twisted shape of someone you once laughed with, now pinning you to the end. You didn't die alone, but you died in the cruelest intimacy, beneath the broken body of a friend, buried by trust, crushed by shared fate, with the cave as your only witness. Died in ritual cave burial after getting sealed, and the cave was not just a place, it was a passage, a threshold between the living and the dead, chosen long ago by hands who believed the earth could hold souls as well as stone. You were not there by chance. You were chosen or cursed. Maybe it was punishment, maybe a sacrifice, maybe a sacred rite twisted by fear. They led you deep into the hollow with torches flickering against walls stained by soot and time. The floor was cool beneath your feet. The air was thick with silence, too still for the living. You begged, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you accepted it. They left offerings, a bowl, a blade, flowers long since rotted. Then the stone door. You watched it slide into place with a final echo. It wasn't fast, it didn't slam, it sealed, and you were alone. At first, you shouted, pounded, pleaded, but the stone did not respond. Your torch dimmed, burned low, then died, leaving you with the sound of your own breath, and eventually your own heartbeat. Days passed, time unraveled, hunger became a whisper, thirst a scream. You scratched at the walls, you screamed until your voice broke, then you whispered again. You weren't buried under the earth, you were buried within it, alive. Your bones still sit there, folded in the dust, curled beside relics that meant nothing in the end, a ritual long forgotten, a soul sealed for eternity in a tomb meant to sanctify or erase. The cave remembered, even if no one else did, and it never opened its mouth again. Crushed under makeshift bridge, inside shaft, you were nearly across. The shaft beneath you yawned wide, bottomless, black, a silent threat that pulsed with depth. But someone had bridged it before, not with steel or bolts or rope, but with scavenged planks and warped beams. A makeshift bridge laid hurriedly across the gap, its age hidden by the dust of time and stillness. You tested it with 1 foot, then 2. It creaked but held. Step by step, breath shallow, you crossed, balancing gear and gravity over a fall that promised no second chances. Halfway across, the plank groaned louder. You stopped. Everything in your body told you to go back. But forward seemed faster. The next step was the last. A snap, sharp, dry, violent. The wood split beneath you. The beam folded like paper. The collapse was immediate. The bridge didn't just drop you, it fell with you. Cracked timber and rusted nails crashed downward, and you with them. But you didn't fall far. A lower ledge caught the wreckage, and you with it. But the wood didn't scatter. It landed on you. A crossbeam drove into your chest. Another slammed your thigh, pinning you to stone. The breath left your lungs with a crack. You gasped, but the pressure only grew. Your ribs buckled under the crushing weight. Your arms flailed for leverage, but there was none. Blood pooled in your mouth. Your heart raced, then stumbled, then slowed. The bridge that carried you betrayed you. The shaft didn't kill you by falling. It killed you by catching, by trapping you beneath your own trust in someone else's shortcut. You didn't plummet into darkness. You were pressed into it, slowly, as wood and stone buried your final breath. Drowned after knocking out light source in underwater passage. The passage was tight, an underwater throat in the cave system, barely wide enough for your tank to slip through. The water was cold, silent, endless. Your light was everything. It cut through the black, traced your way forward, carved order into a world that refused to show you its face. Each breath echoed in your regulator like a countdown. You turned to adjust your path, a simple shift, your elbow tapped stone. Then, darkness. The light snapped off, gone. No flicker, just void. Panic bloomed instantly. You reached for the spare, shaking hands, muffled breath, fingers clumsy in the gloves. You dropped it. It spiraled into black water below, never to be seen again. You were blind, weightless, trapped in a passage only your memory could now map. You spun, tried to follow the guideline, except your hand had lost it when you turned. It was inches away, but the dark was total. You moved forward, or was it back? Up felt like down. Your legs kicked aimlessly. Every wall felt the same. Your chest tightened. Your lungs raced. Air, once measured, now poured out in panic. You struck your head against stone, tried to scream, but all that came was a burst of bubbles rising into blackness. You flipped, writhed, twisted, until the last breath slipped through your mouth and disappeared. The regulator hissed one final time. Silence followed. They found your body days later, suspended inches from the main passage, mask wide-eyed, mouth agape, not drowned by depth or cold, but by darkness. You didn't lose your way, you lost your light. And in a cave, that is the same thing, suffocated by decomposing animal gases. It was the smell that warned you first, sour, thick, unnatural. It coiled in your nostrils like rot given weight, filling your lungs with something too warm, too alive. But curiosity pushed you forward, a distant hollow in the rock, a new tunnel not yet mapped. You stepped in. The air felt heavy, slick. You told yourself it would pass. You were wrong. Around the bend, the source came into view, a massive carcass, maybe a trapped mountain goat or a bear that wandered too deep and couldn't escape. Its body bloated, cracked, melting into the cave floor, skin peeled in wet ribbons. The air shimmered above it. You recoiled, but it was too late. Hydrogen sulfide, methane, ammonia, the gases of decay filled the chamber like poison perfume. You inhaled without realizing. Then again, the first symptom was dizziness. Your vision smeared, your knees buckled. You tried to retreat, but the air behind you had turned too. It wasn't just a pocket, it was a trap. Your head pounded. You dropped to all fours, choking, spitting. Each breath scorched your throat, stole more oxygen than it gave. Your limbs twitched. Your heart galloped in panic, then stuttered. Your eyes watered, then rolled back. The cave did not roar or collapse. It simply breathed the breath of death, and you took it in. Later, your body would be found beside the corpse that killed you, both swollen, both still, not from injury, not from time, but from the invisible violence of what happens when nature forgets to bury its dead and takes the living with it. Lost in deep cave and eaten by scavengers, post-mortem. You entered the depths alone, driven by something, curiosity, defiance, hunger for the untouched. The cave welcomed you in silence, swallowing each footstep, each breath. Tunnels branched endlessly, each one darker than the last. You marked your way, or thought you did, but the cave shifted in your mind. Landmarks vanished, echoes mocked you. You tried retracing your path, turned back, then forward again. Panic arrived quietly. Water ran somewhere far off. You followed it, then slipped, then fell. Not far, but far enough to break a rib, or maybe more. The pain blurred your sense of time. You waited for rescue. No one came. Your light died. Batteries failed. Cold seeped in. Hunger twisted your gut. You whispered to yourself. To the cave, you hallucinated voices, faces, a flicker of hope that never formed. Eventually, you lay down, not from choice, but from failure. Your body slowed, then stopped, but the cave didn't remain still. They came silently, small, efficient, ancient, rodents, insects, blind crustaceans evolved in the dark. You weren't prey, you were sustenance. They found your fingers first, your cheeks, your eyes, soft tissue pulled away with quiet patience. Your body, once frantic with life, became part of the cave's rhythm. By the time light ever found you again, if it did, only fragments remained. Tattered gear, a gnawed boot, bones etched with tiny bite marks. You weren't just lost, you were consumed, not in violence, but in ritual. The cave didn't kill you, it simply received your body and fed its children. And they, timeless, blind, and patient, finished what loneliness began, died in cave used as Wawiubuwutu gas trap. The cave was a relic, one of many scattered across forgotten battlefields, carved into stone not by time, but by war. During World War II, it had served as a strategic hideout, a supply cache, a shelter for soldiers who would never return. But some caves, especially in the Pacific, held darker secrets. Some were never meant to be escaped. You entered it decades later, drawn by history, by curiosity. The air was still, too still. Dust clung to every surface, the silence so complete it pressed into your ears like weight. Rusted canisters lay half buried in the dirt, crumbling helmets, unreadable graffiti, and beneath it all, a faint metallic taste on your tongue. You didn't know what you were breathing. The gas was never meant to linger. It was released in wartime to flush out enemies hiding in these stone bellies. Chlorine, phosgene, mustard, enough to choke lungs, burn eyes, strip skin. The soldiers sealed the entrance afterward, never removed the weapons, never warned what lay within. As you explored, your breath began to tighten, a scratch in your throat, then fire. Your eyes watered, vision blurring into streaks of light. You staggered, fell to your knees. The air burned, your lungs filled with fluid, coughing up blood as you gasped in agony. You tried to crawl, to scream, but the cave, once a trap, had claimed you too. You died surrounded by relics of the past, choked, not by the cruelty of men you could see, but by the poison they left behind. The war was over, but in that cave, its silence still killed. Trampled to death in cave panic evacuation, panic doesn't echo, it detonates. One scream can unravel the fragile order of a group, a sudden noise, a collapse, a flickering light, and fear floods the tunnel like water through stone. You were with others, shoulder to shoulder, voices murmuring, boots tapping, hands brushing damp walls. Then someone shouted, then another, a crash, a cry, and suddenly movement, chaotic, blinded, desperate. People ran, not forward, not back, just away, away from whatever they imagined in the dark. The narrow passage became a funnel of limbs and terror. You tried to stay upright, to move with them, but someone pushed. You stumbled, fell, your hand reached up, but it vanished beneath a boot. Then another, your chest crushed down to the floor, ribs collapsing under the weight of feet that never saw your face. Shouts rang above you, bodies thundering past in a stampede of survival. No one stopped, no one could. You tried to scream, but your breath was gone, trapped beneath bodies. Gear, rock, fear. A foot struck your head, the light inside you dimmed, and still they ran. Your bones broke slowly, under elbows, under packs, under panicked strangers who didn't see the life beneath them, only the space they needed to escape. Blood filled your mouth, your fingers scratched at stone, at boots, at nothing, until there was nothing left to feel. When the silence returned, they looked back. They found your body twisted in the mud, face crushed, limbs bent wrong. You weren't lost. You weren't alone. You were just in the way. When fear took over and the cave became a mouth too narrow for everyone to survive, lost rope line and died trying to backtrack. In a labyrinthine cave, rope is more than a tool. It's memory, a lifeline carved into darkness. You descended confidently, marking your path with careful knots and firm anchors, threading your way through twisting corridors and crawl spaces, so tight they held your breath hostage. The silence was thick, but you weren't afraid. You had the line. You had the way back, until you didn't. Somewhere in the confusion of passages, in the tangle of overlapping chambers and mirrored turns, the rope slipped. Maybe it snagged on a rock and pulled free. Maybe you clipped it wrong. Maybe panic made your hands fumble. 1 second it was in your grasp, then gone, swallowed by the dark behind you. You spun, reached, traced the walls, but there was nothing, just stone, just space. You told yourself to stay calm. You retraced your steps, or tried, but the cave was a liar. Its paths wound in circles that never closed. You marked walls, left gear, followed your instincts, but your instincts betrayed you. Hours passed, then a day, Your light dimmed, your throat dried. Every chamber looked the same. The silence grew sharp, stabbing into your thoughts. Then came the exhaustion. You sat, then crawled, then collapsed. You died slowly, not from injury, but from erasure. Hunger, thirst, and despair hollowed you out one breath at a time. By the time anyone found you, if they did, you were curled against the wall like a shadow, eyes open, mouth slack. The rope had been your voice, your direction. Without it, the cave didn't have to kill you. It just waited for you to disappear. Died from hypercapnia in tight vertical shaft. The shaft was narrow, straight, and suffocating. A vertical tunnel carved by time, just wide enough for your body to descend inch by inch. You moved carefully, back pressed to one wall, boots searching for tiny ledges, the dim light above shrinking with every breath. The air was stale, thick, but you told yourself it was normal. Deep caves always smell of stone and stillness. But this wasn't stillness. This was build-up. Hypercapnia begins quietly. You don't feel it at first, just a warm flush in your face, a slight dizziness. You think it's fatigue, maybe nerves, but in that shaft, there is no airflow, no circulation. Each exhaled breath adds to the concentration of carbon dioxide collecting like an invisible flood. You are breathing your own poison. You pause to rest. Your pulse is fast, harder than it should be. Sweat beads at your brow despite the cold. You inhale deeply, but it brings no comfort. Your head spins. Panic flickers. You try to ascend, but your limbs feel heavy, weak. Every breath now burns, not from exertion, but from suffocation in slow motion. Then come the muscle spasms. Your vision narrows. Your heart pounds in your ears, then begins to flutter. You gasp for air that isn't there. You scream, but there's no force behind it. Your body convulses once, twice, then collapses against the stone, trapped vertically, wedged in place, eyes wide, mouth open. You didn't drown. You didn't fall. You died breathing, each inhale filling your lungs with the very gas that made your blood turn acidic. The cave didn't crush you. It let you kill yourself, breath by breath, until silence returned. Broke neck in misstep, over pit. It was supposed to be a short crossing, a gap you'd measured with your eyes, calculated with instinct, the kind of leap you've made a dozen times before. The pit below was deep but manageable. Dark, yes, but quiet. Nothing stirred beneath. You felt your boots grip the rock. You exhaled, and you jumped. But caves don't forgive misjudgment. Your toe caught the lip, just barely, enough to shift your balance mid-air, enough to twist your momentum. You didn't fall far, just awkwardly, wrongly. Your body spun, the angle broke. You didn't land on your feet. You didn't even land on your back. You landed head first, your chin tucked, your spine compressed, and with a sickening crack, your world went still. Your neck snapped instantly. There was no second chance, no crawling, no gasping plea into the void. Your limbs twitched once, then fell slack. The helmet rolled from your head, spinning briefly before resting beside you in the dirt. Your eyes stared upward, frozen wide in the dim light, reflecting the jagged ceiling you never had time to see. No sound followed, just the drip of water. The pit, silent witness to your final leap, swallowed the moment and moved on. Hours passed, then days. You lay crumpled at the edge of ambition, killed not by a great fall, but by inches, a misstep, a fraction, a heartbeat too early. In a world carved by time, the cave didn't notice. It only opened its mouth and closed it again, walled into cave by prank that went wrong. It started with laughter, a dare, a joke. You crawled into a narrow chamber just beyond the main passage, maybe to explore, maybe just to prove you weren't scared. Your friends, laughing loud, watched from the entrance. One of them joked, "Let's seal them in." The others played along, just for a moment, just to spook you. They rolled a slab of stone. It took effort, grunts, cheers. Dust filled the air as the entrance was blocked, not completely, just enough to darken the space, enough to make your voice echo differently. You yelled out, laughing too. Very funny, now move it. But the rock didn't move back. Maybe it was heavier than they thought. Maybe it wedged tighter than expected. Panic began slowly, as a pulse behind your ribs. You laughed less. You shouted more. You pounded with your fists. On the other side, voices shifted. Confusion, nervousness, then fear. They tried. You heard the grunts turn frantic, then silence, then footsteps fading. You were alone. The air thickened. The chamber was too small to stand. Your breathing quickened. Your flashlight flickered across the stone wall that shouldn't be there. You screamed until your throat split open. You clawed at rock with torn nails. You whispered apologies, threats, prayers. Hours passed, then days. You died pressed against the stone, voice broken, heart pounding until it didn't. Not from malice, not from nature, but from a joke that turned into a tomb. The cave didn't laugh. It only kept your body, sealed behind the weight of someone else's mistake, and a silence no one could ever undo. Shot accidentally by nervous spelunker, in panic, the cave twisted for miles. Tight corridors bleeding into vast chambers, every echo amplified, every footstep sharpened by the kind of silence that makes the mind imagine things. You were deep in, with one companion. He was new, anxious, carrying a sidearm, a precaution, he said, against animals, or worse. You weren't worried, until you saw the fear in his eyes begin to grow. The noises started first, subtle, not threatening, just drips, loose gravel, wind curling through fissures. But in the dark, the mind warps sound. Every click becomes claws, every shuffle a threat. You tried to calm him, told him it was nothing, but his eyes darted wildly, his grip tightened on the gun. Then you turned a corner ahead of him. He lost sight of you, just for a moment, a heartbeat. Your foot dislodged a rock. It tumbled. He shouted. The gun fired. The explosion of sound filled the cave like a thunderclap, deafening and final. Pain bloomed in your chest, searing, immediate, unnatural. You staggered, dropped your light. The world spun. Your knees gave way. You fell hard, breath shallow, vision swimming in black. He screamed your name, ran to you, but it was too late. The bullet had torn through your lungs. Blood filled your mouth. You tried to speak. Only a gasp came. His hands trembled over you, sobbing apologies, his face twisted in horror. You looked at him, not with anger, but confusion, disbelief. You died not from the cave's hunger or gravity's grip, but from fear, a split-second panic, a friend's shaking hand, and the echo of a shot that never should have been fired. Bitten by rabid raccoon and died after delirium. You didn't expect movement. Not here, deep in the cave where the air barely shifts and light has never lived, but you saw it, two glassy eyes staring from a rock shelf, a low growl that didn't belong in silence, a raccoon, ragged, foam-crusted lips, fur matted with mud and something darker. It didn't flee, it lunged. You turned, but not fast enough. Its teeth sank into your calf, deep, deliberate. You kicked, shouted, beat it off with trembling hands. It vanished into the shadows, its shriek trailing off into the black. The wound bled. You bandaged it, shook it off. Just a scratch, you whispered, but your body knew better. Hours passed, then a day. You began to sweat. Your thoughts tangled. A tremor took your hand, then light began to blur. The fever hit you like a flood. You laughed at nothing, cried without meaning. The cave spun even when you were still. You tried to drink, but water choked you. Your throat rebelled. You clawed at your neck, your eyes, your skin. Rabies is not a quick death. Your body seized in spasms. Your voice slurred, sloshed, shattered. In the final hours, your mind unraveled completely. You screamed into stone, tore at your clothes, dragged yourself across the floor like a ghost already fading. Delirium stole your name, your thoughts, your fear, until only instinct remained. And then, stillness. You died with your eyes wide open, mouth foaming, limbs locked in a final spasm of confusion and pain, alone in the cold dark, undone not by rockfall or drowning, but by the teeth of a creature driven mad by the same fate it left behind in you. Died due to malfunctioning oxygen tank. The hiss of your oxygen tank was your only music, steady, rhythmic, the quiet whisper of survival beneath tons of stone and pressure. In the flooded silence of an underwater cave, every breath mattered. Every valve, every gauge, every seal had to be perfect. You checked it all before diving. Twice. You trusted it, because you had to. The descent was smooth. Your body glided through narrow blue corridors, torchlight slicing through the murk. The water was cold but calm, your heart steady, until the hiss changed. A sputter. You stopped, checked the gauge. The needle twitched. Wrong. Too low. Impossible. You tapped it. Nothing. You switched to your backup. It clunked. Then silence. The hiss was gone. Your lungs tightened instantly, not from lack of air, but from the realization that it would run out. You turned back, flippers thrashing, bubbles rising in frantic swirls. You knew the route, but it felt longer now. The walls blurred, your vision narrowed. You sucked in a half breath, then water. You coughed, but the mask trapped the sound. Panic bloomed. Your hands scrambled for the guide rope. It slipped. You tried again, but the world tilted. Your limbs weakened, chest burning, thoughts unraveling. Then blackness. Your body drifted, weightless, as air bubbles fled your mouth one last time. You didn't thrash. You didn't scream. You just slowed, then stopped. The tank clamped useless to your back like a broken promise. The cave didn't crush you. It didn't collapse. It simply waited for a single failure, and then it took everything, one missed breath at a time. Killed during a cave-in caused by illegal explosives. The cave wasn't natural anymore. The walls were scarred, blasted, blackened by hands that cared more for what they could take than what could be preserved. Miners, unlicensed, reckless, had carved their way into the mountain's gut with stolen dynamite and desperation. The sound of their drills still echoed faintly when you entered. Maybe they were gone, maybe not, but the earth remembered. You were exploring a deeper section, drawn by curiosity or rumor when it happened. A muffled boom, distant but wrong, not thunder, not collapse, detonation. The ground trembled, pebbles rained from the ceiling, dust poured from fractures like smoke. Then the roar began, stone grinding against stone, a sound like a scream buried under miles of pressure. You turned to run, too late. The ceiling gave out. 1,000 years of silence fell at once. A wall of rock crashed down behind you, then in front, boxing you in. Slabs of shattered limestone pinned your legs. One struck your back, drove you to the floor. The air filled with dust, choking, thick as ash. You gasped, felt something shift inside your chest. A broken rib, a punctured lung, blood pooled warm at your side. You cried out, but the echo didn't answer. You lay crushed, motionless, beneath the debris of greed. The miners were long gone, vanished into tunnels they carved and left to rot. Their explosives had weakened the cave's bones, and it collapsed not on them, but on you. You didn't die from a misstep or nature's wrath. You died from someone else's violence, buried in a tomb made by hands you never saw. Fell in pitch darkness into rock chute. Your light had died an hour ago, maybe two. It's hard to tell anymore. Time loses shape when the dark presses in from every side, when every breath echoes like footsteps that aren't yours. You had a backup once, but it failed, or you dropped it, or you imagined you even had one. All that's left now is your hands sliding along damp stone, your breath too loud, your mind too fast. You told yourself to move slowly, to stay calm, but the cave is a labyrinth, and the dark has fingers. It pulls at your balance, it bends space, and then your boot finds nothing. The ground vanishes beneath you. You don't fall far at first, just a drop, but it's enough to start the slide. The chute is narrow, jagged, vertical, but twisted. You hit it hard. Your ribs slam stone, your shoulder cracks, and gravity takes over. You tumble in blindness. No control, no pause. You scream, but it's drowned by your own body, crashing down the chute, bone against rock, gear torn away piece by piece. You land with a snap, spine, neck, maybe both. You lie twisted at the bottom of a place you never saw coming. Blood trickles down your temple. Your fingers twitch once, then stop. There's no wind, no water, just the quiet settling of dust as your final breath fades into stone. No one hears you fall. No one knows where. The dark gave no warning, no mercy. It simply opened its throat and swallowed you whole. Eaten alive by insects. Fictional but horrifying concept. It started with a tickle, just a brush along your forearm as you crawled through a narrow tunnel deep beneath the surface. You thought it was your jacket, maybe dust, maybe nerves. Then it moved again, across your neck, under your shirt. You stopped, shined your light. Nothing. Then the walls shimmered. They weren't made of stone, not entirely. They were moving subtly, like breathing, like skin. That's when you saw them. Thousands, maybe millions. Insects the size of your fingernail, glassy-eyed, pale, crawling in perfect silence. They didn't flee from your light. They didn't scatter. They advanced. They surged toward you like a wave. You scrambled backward, heart in your throat, but the cave offered no room to run. They covered the floor, the walls, the ceiling, then your boots, your legs. You screamed as they poured into your clothes, into your ears, your mouth. Their mandibles clicked in rhythm, not random, not wild, organized, intentional. You clawed at them, crushed dozens, hundreds. It didn't matter. They replaced each other in seconds. You tried to stand but slipped on their bodies. They swarmed your face. Your screams choked into gurgles as they invaded your throat. They weren't biting yet, not fully. They were claiming. When the first tear came, flesh peeled back from your calf. You didn't feel pain, just heat, pressure, then another, then 100. They weren't eating you to survive. They were disassembling you, piece by piece. Soft tissue first, then muscle, eyes, lips. The final sound you heard wasn't your voice. It was the whisper of countless legs crawling over what used to be your body, methodical, precise, and endlessly hungry. The cave didn't echo your screams. It devoured them. Suffocated in abandoned mineshaft turned cave. It looked like a cave, stone walls, timber supports aged to dust, an entrance swallowed by vines and silence. But it wasn't natural. It was a mine, long abandoned, forgotten by maps and memory. You entered thinking it was just another tunnel to explore. The air was still, too still. You didn't notice the smell right away, the kind that isn't quite rot or earth, but something thinner, more absent. The deeper you went, the more the world changed. The wooden beams groaned overhead, warped by decades. The walls wept with damp, and your footsteps grew quieter, not from caution, but from oxygen slipping away. Old minds breathe differently. You passed a rusted sign, unreadable. It once warned of what lay ahead. Pockets of bad air, carbon dioxide, methane, invisible killers. But you didn't know. You kept walking. Your breaths grew faster, a little dizzy. You tightened your helmet, adjusted your light, but the fog in your mind didn't lift. You sat down, just for a second. Your chest ached. The walls began to pulse. Or maybe your vision did. Your hands trembled. Your thoughts came slower, like trying to speak underwater. You reached for your radio, but your fingers missed the button. Again and again. Then stillness. You didn't fall. You simply stopped. Your body, starved of oxygen, went quiet in the dark. No panic, no drama, just a gradual slipping. You died seated against a wall built by men 100 years ago, in a mine disguised as a cave, suffocated by the memory of what used to be air. Bled out after slicing leg, open on obsidian rock. Obsidian is beautiful, volcanic glass forged in the heat of Earth's fury, cooled into a mere black blade. It doesn't dull, it doesn't forgive. In caves carved by ancient lava, it hides in plain sight, smooth, sharp, seductive. You stepped wrong. That's all it took. A narrow passage, a glimmer. Your boot slid sideways across slick stone. Your leg scraped the edge of a fallen shard, jutting like a buried scythe. You didn't feel it at first, just a sudden warmth. Then the pain arrived, sharp and electric. You looked down. Blood poured fast. The cut wasn't wide, but it was deep, deep enough to sever. The obsidian had sliced clean through flesh, through muscle, through artery. You wrapped it, tight, anything you could use. Rope, sleeve, trembling hands. But the blood didn't stop. It pulsed, it throbbed, it sprayed with each heartbeat, staining the rock like ink. You tried to crawl. Every movement smeared your life farther down the corridor. Your vision blurred, your fingers numbed. You whispered your own name to stay present, but it drifted, soft and useless in the dark. Time slowed, your heart weakened, the cold set in, not from the cave, but from the inside out. You died not in violence, but in silence, bled out beneath ancient black glass that watched you collapse, reflecting your final moments back at you. The obsidian remained untouched, unbroken, still sharp, still waiting. It didn't need force. It only needed one misstep, and you gave it exactly that. Died of infection from cave leech bite. The bite was small, barely noticeable, just a soft pinch on your ankle as you waded through stagnant water in a low tunnel, the ceiling pressing down like a breathless sky. You glanced down, saw it, slick, dark, pulsing, latched onto your skin. You peeled it off, tossed it aside. The blood kept flowing, but you laughed it off. Persistent little bastard, you muttered. You didn't clean the wound. Deep in caves, the water never moves. It festers, gathering centuries of rot, of animal waste, of unseen organisms drifting like ghosts in the dark. The leech didn't kill you, but what it left behind did. The pain began hours later, a throbbing heat beneath the skin. You stopped, checked your ankle. The wound was swollen, angry, ringed in red. You wrapped it, kept walking, but the fever came fast, soaking your clothes in sweat, fogging your mind. You stumbled, your limbs shook. The infection spread like fire through your bloodstream. Your body went to war, but deep underground, there's no medicine, no IV drip, just the cold and the waiting. Your leg turned purple, then black. The pain was relentless, like teeth in your veins. You cried out. No one answered. Your blood thickened, your breath shortened. You collapsed in a shallow pool, delirious, whispering to shadows. In the end, you didn't scream. You just trembled, locked in fever, lips cracked, eyes open. The leech didn't care. It took a drop. The cave took everything else. And when they found your body, if they ever did, there was nothing dramatic. Just rot, silence, and a lesson written in infection. Even the smallest things down here can end you. Died of fungal infection from spores in Batcave. The cave was alive with sound, wings fluttering in the dark, the soft squeaks of thousands of bats clinging to the ceiling like shadows with breath. Their presence felt ancient, primal. You moved carefully, your light sweeping across the guano-covered floor, the walls streaked with decades of colony life. The smell was overwhelming, sweet, sour, decaying. But it wasn't the bats that killed you. It was the air. Unseen in the dust of dried droppings, the spores of Histoplasma capsulatum hung suspended, microscopic and waiting. You inhaled them without knowing. Just a breath here, a gasp there, a few spores, nothing more. But they took root. Days later, it began. A cough, dry, persistent, then fever. You told yourself it was a cold, maybe the flu, but your lungs burned. Breathing became labor. The cough turned wet, then red. You gasped between sentences. Every inhale felt like dragging air through shattered glass. Doctors were confused at first. Then scans showed the truth. Fungal masses blooming inside your lungs, feeding, spreading. Your body turned on itself. Oxygen refused to flow. You were drowning without water. Antibiotics failed. Antifungals came too late. You died in a hospital bed, far from the cave, but buried by it all the same. Your lungs blackened from within, filled with something you couldn't see, couldn't fight. The bats remained undisturbed, still flapping through the cave's endless dark. You came seeking wonder, and left with death inhaled like dust, a whisper of rot that grew silently until it consumed you from the inside out. Smothered in quicksand-like wet sediment, the chamber was silent, wide, and strangely soft beneath your boots. No jagged stone, no gravel, just a bed of fine, damp silt, like a cushion laid out by the cave itself. You stepped forward, relieved. It felt gentle compared to the sharp, uneven paths behind you, but you didn't know what lay beneath. Your foot sank an inch, then another. You paused, shifted your weight. The sediment sucked gently, hungrily. You tried to step back, but your other foot was already deeper. The ground wasn't solid. It was swallowing you. You panicked. Every movement made it worse. The more you struggled, the faster the cave's floor devoured you. Mud climbed your shins, then your knees. It clung like wet cement, heavy, cold, alive. You flailed for grip, but there were no ledges, no roots, no stone, just shifting, liquid earth. The sediment reached your waist. You screamed. It echoed, then disappeared. You clawed at the walls forming around your body, but each breath took effort. The mud was at your chest now, dense and pulsing. It pressed in from every side. You tilted your head back, neck straining, your arms pinned, your legs invisible. Then came the mouthful, wet, gritty, choking. It filled your throat, your nose. You gasped, and the earth filled your lungs. Your body stopped thrashing. Later, all that remained was a slight ripple in the mud, smooth and undisturbed. No bones, no rope, just silence. The cave didn't collapse or roar. It simply exhaled and held you in place, breathless, beneath the surface of a floor you thought would carry you. Died of exposure in cave open to cold winds. The cave offered shelter, at least that's what you thought. You entered to escape the storm outside, howling winds, needles of sleet, sky torn open by winter. The entrance yawned wide behind you, a mouth in the mountains, and you stepped inside believing it would protect you. But not all caves are warm. Some breathe, and when they exhale, it's with the lungs of the mountain itself. The wind chased you inside, a low howl funneling through the tunnels like a predator. You pushed deeper, thinking the stone would block the cold, but the passage narrowed, then opened again into a chamber, a trap disguised as safety. The wind funneled in behind you, faster now, sharper, carrying ice, pulling warmth from your body with every breath. You tried to light a flame. It died instantly. You tried to move, to keep your blood alive, but your limbs stiffened. Your fingers stopped listening. Your breath fogged thick, then thinner, then not at all. Time blurred. You curled into yourself, hands beneath your arms, teeth clattering out useless prayers. Your jacket frosted from the inside. Your lashes froze shut. Pain faded to numbness. Then nothing. You didn't scream. There was no one to hear. You didn't fight. There was nothing to fight. You died slowly, quietly, frozen stiff in a stone cocoon, mouth open, eyes still blinking until they froze shut forever. The cave didn't crush you. It didn't flood or collapse. It simply let the wind in and let it carve you hollow, like everything else it shelters. Broke spine in vertical fall and died slowly. The shaft looked manageable, narrow, straight, the kind you'd descended before. You double-checked your gear. The rope felt secure. Your fingers gripped the stone with steady confidence. One foot, then the other. The descent began in silence, breath even, heart calm. But confidence is fragile in the dark. One anchor failed. Maybe it was old. Maybe it shifted. Maybe you missed something. It didn't matter. The rope gave way. The fall was instant. No warning, no pause, just the blur of walls flashing past, air ripping through your ears, and the sickening knowledge that nothing could stop what was coming. You struck the stone floor hard, but you didn't die on impact. That was the horror. You were alive and broken. The crack in your spine came with a sound you couldn't even register, a deep internal snap like dry wood twisting. Your body crumpled into itself, legs folded beneath you at unnatural angles. You tried to move. Nothing responded. Your arms trembled. You screamed, but it came out thin, breathless. Pain was everywhere, not sharp, but total. A pressure, a heat. Your lower body was gone, still attached but dead weight. Panic clawed into your lungs. You tried to drag yourself with bloody fingertips, inches at a time, bones grinding with each gasp. No one answered. No light came. Hours passed. The pain turned cold, then numb, then distant. You whispered things to the cave, your name, a prayer, a plea, but stone doesn't speak, and the silence grew heavier. You died curled on the cave floor, not instantly, but slowly, quietly. Your spine shattered, your will drained, your voice fading into rock that never looked back. Disoriented and walked in circles until death. It began with a wrong turn, one bend too many, a fork you didn't mark. Maybe your light flickered. Maybe you thought you remembered the way. The cave is quiet when it deceives you. No sudden noise, no shift, just silence, and a slow unraveling of direction. You told yourself it was fine. You'd retrace your steps, but each tunnel led to more tunnels. Each wall looked the same. Even your footprints, if they remained, pointed in every direction. The air was stale, the paths twisting, like a mind losing track of itself, and you were alone. You circled once, then twice. Time bent. You tried to rest but couldn't sit still. Anxiety clawed at your chest. The dark felt tighter, the silence louder. You marked the walls, left gear, scraped stone, only to find those same marks again hours later. You realized you were walking in loops, in your own echo. Hunger set in, then thirst. You tried to conserve energy, but panic kept you moving. Your feet blistered, bled, your thoughts fractured. You began talking aloud, to the cave, to yourself, to no one. Your flashlight dim, then your will. You finally collapsed, not from injury, but from futility. You curled beside a wall you had passed 3 times already. No wounds, no fall, just exhaustion, just defeat. You didn't die from the cave, you died in it, lost in its endless spirals, chasing yourself through a labyrinth without a center. The earth didn't close around you, you just stopped walking, and no one was there to see that you had never truly gone anywhere at all. Fell through brittle ice layer in glacial cave. It looked solid, smooth, blue, gleaming like frozen glass beneath your boots. The floor of the glacial cave shimmered with ancient cold, a surface forged by centuries of pressure and time. You walked carefully in awe of the cathedral of ice around you. The air was sharp, the silence profound. You took one more step, then the ice cracked, not loudly, just a soft pop beneath your heel, a subtle shift. You froze, too late. The surface gave way like glass under fire. Your body plunged through, arms flailing, a scream torn from your throat as the world fractured around you. The fall was sudden, brutal, silent. You hit a lower shelf of jagged ice, then kept falling. Deeper, you landed on your back with a crunch. Maybe your spine snapped, maybe your ribs punctured your lungs. The air left your body like a ghost. Above you, the hole sealed with a shower of snow and shards. Light disappeared, cold roared in. You tried to breathe, but it burned. Your limbs wouldn't move. Your skin began to freeze where it touched the ice. You weren't drowning. You were freezing from the inside out, blood slowing, heart fluttering. Your mouth open, but the scream died in a mist of frost. No one knew you fell. No rope tethered you. No one could see the crack. You lay twisted in a crevasse no one had mapped, your body slowly turning into the very thing that killed you. The cave didn't rage or roar. It whispered you away beneath a surface you thought was strong and buried you in silence, colder than death, stabbed by falling ice. Stalactite. The ceiling shimmered with beauty, long glistening spears of ice stretching downward like frozen fangs. They hung in eerie stillness, catching your headlamp's glow with a quiet majesty. Each one had formed slowly, drip by icy drip, over months of deep winter breath curling through the cavern's lungs. You passed beneath them with awe, unaware they were not ornaments. They were weapons, waiting. The shift was almost imperceptible. Maybe a whisper of warmth from your body, maybe the vibration of a footstep, or a breath too loud. A crack, soft, delicate, like glass cracking in another room. You looked up and one was already falling. It didn't slice through the air, it plummeted. The stalactite struck you with the full force of weight and gravity. Its tapered tip pierced your shoulder, then slipped deep into your chest. Not jagged, clean, sharp, final. You staggered backward, light flickering, mouth gasping in shock. The pain was instant and spreading, hot against the cold. You fell to your knees, then flat against the icy stone. Blood spread beneath you, steaming faintly in the frigid air. You tried to speak, to call out, but your breath gurgled, trapped behind the wound. Your hands trembled over the shaft of ice still jutting from your body. Beautiful, cruel, glistening in your own blood. And then the cold returned, not outside, but inside you. You watched your light dim, your heart slow, and knew the cave hadn't collapsed or flooded or raged. It had simply let one of its delicate sculptures fall, silent, perfect, and deadly. Died from heat stroke in volcanic cave system. The cave pulsed with heat. You felt it before you even entered, rising from the ground like breath, thick and humid, curling around your neck. It was a lava tube, forged by fire, a tunnel of black glass and scorched stone. The air inside shimmered. Your skin prickled, but you told yourself it was fine. You had water. You had time. The deeper you went, the worse it grew. The heat wasn't just around you, it was in you. Your sweat stopped. That was the first sign. Your body dried from the inside out. You loosened your gear, stripped off your jacket, tried to breathe through the thick, furnace-like air. The walls wept with vapor. Your flashlight flickered against surfaces that seemed to ripple from temperature alone. Then the dizziness came. You stumbled, sat down, tried to steady your vision, but the heat climbed higher, tighter, pressing behind your eyes. Your heart pounded against your ribs. You drank, but it didn't help. Your mouth stayed dry. Your thoughts blurred into fragments. You couldn't remember the way back. You tried to crawl, to shout, but your muscles gave up. Your limbs trembled, then refused. You collapsed face down on warm rock, breath shallow and broken. The world spun, then narrowed, then dimmed. You weren't sweating anymore. You weren't moving. You died slowly, cooked alive in the breathless silence of a cave born from fire. No flame, no collapse, just heat, steady and merciless, hollowing you out one heartbeat at a time while the earth pulsed with the memory of the lava that carved your tomb. Suffocated by toxic fungal bloom, e.g. histoplasmosis. The chamber felt stale, heavy. The air carried a scent, earthy, bitter, almost sweet. You assumed it was guano, the remnants of bats long gone. You pressed on, your headlamp cutting through clouds of invisible dust stirred by your breath, your boots, your presence. But something else lingered in that air, something living, microscopic, waiting. Histoplasma capsulatum, a fungal spore born from decomposing matter, harmless in small doses, lethal in clouds. And you walked straight into one. The symptoms came slowly. At first, just a tickle in your throat, then a cough, then sweat. You wiped your brow and pushed forward, blaming fatigue, bad air, stale water. But inside your lungs, the spores were multiplying, nesting, feeding. The irritation became fire. Your breath shortened, your chest tightened like a rope pulled tighter with each step. You gasped, sat down, tried to rest, but your lungs betrayed you. They filled, not with fluid, but with 1,000 invisible knives. Every inhale shredded you from the inside. You collapsed. You vomited blood. Your heart raced, then faltered. You clawed at your chest, your throat, the cave floor, desperate to pull something out that could not be touched. Your last moments weren't loud. They were quiet, stifled, your hands curled against your ribs as your lungs sealed shut, strangled by the very breath you took. They say caves breathe. You believed it, until the breath you took in return became your final mistake. The fungus did not hunt you. It simply bloomed, and your lungs became its garden.